Jessica Jessie Harper was a 29-year-old woman living in Athens, Georgia. She worked as a barista at Starbucks, where she was known for her friendly smile and artistic coffee creations. Jessie had a vibrant personality and loved to bring joy to those around her. She often worked on art projects in her free time, dreaming of opening her own gallery someday. Jessie lived in a small apartment close to downtown Athens, where she enjoyed the lively atmosphere and community events. Jessie had a close-knit group of friends and was well-liked by her coworkers. She was sociable, often organizing get-togethers and participating in local art shows. Her friends described her as creative and free-spirited, someone who could light up any room. Jessie was also involved in various local activities, such as volunteering at the animal shelter and attending music festivals. Born and raised in Athens, Jessie attended Clark Central High School and later took some art classes at the University of Georgia. Her family included her elderly husband, Dan Harper, a retired photography professor, and her younger brother, Mark Harper, who lived in Boston. Jessie's relationship with Dan was complicated by their 63-year age difference and Dan's health problems. Despite these challenges, Jessie remained dedicated to her marriage. In the days before her death, Jessie was busy with her usual activities. She had just finished a large mural at a local cafe and was excited about its positive reception. She was also preparing for an art exhibition at a nearby gallery, where she planned to showcase her latest pieces. Jessie spent her days working at Starbucks, catching up with friends, and creating art. She often talked about her future plans and dreams, showing her optimistic outlook on life. However, Jessie's personal life was not without its difficulties. She was involved in a love triangle with her husband, Dan, and her close friend and coworker, Jess Owens. This complicated relationship added stress to Jessie's life, though she tried to keep a positive attitude. On the morning of August 15, 2010, Jessie Harper's life would come to a tragic end. Her vibrant personality and creative spirit were well known in Athens, and her death shocked the community. Jessie was a beloved figure whose dreams and kindness left a lasting impact on those who knew her. On the morning of August 15, 2010, Athens, Georgia was enjoying a clear, sunny day with temperatures in the mid-70s. The town was quiet, with many people still recovering from the excitement of the recent Twilight Criterium, a popular annual bike race. At 8:30 a.m., Patty Johnson, Jessie's next-door neighbor, began to worry. She hadn't seen Jessie in a few days, which was unusual since they often chatted in the hallway. Patty, a 45-year-old schoolteacher, decided to check on Jessie. She knocked on the door, but got no answer. Knowing Jessie often left a spare key with her, Patty decided to use it. As she opened the door, a sense of dread filled her. The apartment was eerily quiet, with the only sound being the hum of the air conditioner. Patty called out Jessie's name, but got no response. As Patty walked into the living room, she made a horrifying discovery. Jessie was lying on the floor, motionless. A silk scarf was tightly wrapped around her neck, and her face was pale. Shocked and terrified, Patty immediately backed out of the apartment and dialed 911, her hands shaking. Within minutes, emergency services arrived at the scene. Paramedics quickly confirmed that Jessie was dead. The police arrived shortly after. Patty was visibly shaken as she spoke with them. She described Jessie as a cheerful and friendly neighbor who had never shown any signs of trouble. Patty's account was filled with sadness and disbelief. She could not understand who would want to hurt Jessie. The news of Jessie's death quickly spread through the community. The local newspaper, the Athens Banner-Herald, reported on the tragic incident, and residents were stunned. Jessie's co-workers at Starbucks were particularly devastated, as they had considered her a close friend. The discovery of Jessie's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation that would soon reveal the dark secrets of those closest to her. On the morning of August 15, 2010, the Athens Police Department swiftly responded to the 911 call about Jessie Harper's death. Detective Michael Reynolds and Officer Sarah Thompson led the investigation. Detective Reynolds, known for his calm demeanor and methodical approach, was a veteran in the department. Officer Thompson, respected for her keen attention to detail, was relatively new but already showed promise. Upon arriving at Jessie's apartment, the police immediately secured the area. The living room where Jessie's body was found was unsettling. The sight of the young woman with a silk scarf tightly wrapped around her neck was a chilling image.
The room itself was mostly tidy, but there were signs of a struggle, an overturned coffee table, and a few scattered cushions. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting Jessie knew her attacker. Detective Reynolds began examining the scene, carefully noting every detail. Officer Thompson started taking photographs and collecting evidence. They found fingerprints on the silk scarf and various surfaces in the apartment. But police also took samples for DNA testing. The crime scene investigators dusted for prints, collected fibers, and looked for any other potential clues that could point to the murderer. The Athens police used the latest forensic tools available in 2010. They brought in a luminol spray to check for any hidden bloodstains and used an alternate light source to find fibers or hairs that might not be visible to the naked eye. They also checked Jesse's phone and computer for any recent communications that could provide clues. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson interviewed neighbors and friends. Karen Johnson, who had found Jesse, described the victim as a friendly and cheerful neighbor. She mentioned Jesse's complicated personal life, including her relationships with her husband, Dan Harper, and her friend, Jessica Jess Owens. The investigators also spoke with Jesse's coworkers at Starbucks. They described Jesse as a kind and creative person, but hinted at some recent tension between her and Jess Owens. This information helped the police narrow down their list of suspects. Throughout the day, the police worked diligently to gather all possible evidence from the crime scene. The discovery of Jesse Harper's body had shaken the community, and the police were determined to find her killer. Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson knew that solving this case would require piecing together the puzzle of Jesse's life and relationships. Dan Harper, the first suspect, was 92 years old and Jesse's husband. A retired photography professor at the University of Georgia, Dan was famous for his work during the Korean War for Life magazine. He met Jesse when she was 19, and they quickly started dating, despite the 63-year age difference. Dan was known for his adventurous spirit and charm, but his intense nature sometimes led to possessiveness. His frequent hospital visits for health issues created tension in their marriage, adding to the complications of their relationship. The police brought Dan in for questioning at the Athens Police Department. Detective Michael Reynolds led the interrogation, wanting to understand Dan's perspective and his possible involvement in Jesse's death. Dan appeared heartbroken and tired as he sat down with the detectives. His eyes were filled with sadness, and he spoke softly but firmly, denying any involvement in the crime. Dan described his relationship with Jesse as loving but strained due to his health problems. He admitted to feeling jealous at times, especially when Jesse spent time with her friends or worked late at Starbucks. However, he insisted that he would never harm her. He told the detectives about his last interaction with Jesse, which had been a simple conversation about her upcoming art show. Dan's alibi for the night of the murder was his hospital stay, where he was being treated for a chronic illness. The detectives checked Dan's alibi and found it solid. Hospital records confirmed he was admitted the night Jesse was killed. Despite this, they continued to probe for more information, hoping to uncover any details that could help them understand Jesse's life and potential threats. During the interrogation, Dan remained calm but visibly distraught. He answered the questions patiently, often pausing to collect his thoughts. He expressed deep sorrow over Jesse's death and a strong desire to see her killer brought to justice. Dan's love for Jesse was evident, and its heartbreak seemed genuine. As the investigation continued, the police turned their attention to other suspects, but Dan Harper remained a person of interest due to his close relationship with the victim and the complexities within their marriage. They hoped further investigation would reveal more about who could have wanted Jesse dead. The second suspect in Jesse Harper's murder was Jessica Jess Owens, a 27-year-old co-worker and close friend of Jesse. Jess Owens worked with Jesse at Starbucks, where their friendship blossomed into a secret sexual relationship. Jess was known for her warm and friendly personality, but she also struggled with feelings of insecurity, especially about Jesse's relationship with her husband, Dan Harper. On August 16, 2010, the police brought Jess Owens in for questioning at the Athens Police Department. Detective Michael Reynolds and Officer Sarah Thompson led the interrogation. Jess appeared nervous as she entered the room, her eyes red from crying. She sat down and took a deep breath before the questioning began. Jess described her relationship with Jesse as more than just friendship. She admitted they had been involved in a sexual relationship for several months. She spoke about how much she loved Jesse and how their bond had grown stronger over time. Jess explained that while she knew about Jesse's marriage to Dan, she believed Jesse would eventually leave him for her. When asked about the night of the murder, Jess said she had been at home, feeling unwell. She stated that she had not seen Jesse since their shift together at Starbucks the day before.
However, her alibi was weak, as no one could confirm her whereabouts during the crucial hours. Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson pressed further, asking Jess about any recent arguments or conflicts with Jesse. Jess admitted they had argued a few days before the murder. She confessed that she was jealous and frustrated about Jesse's relationship with Dan, but she insisted she would never harm Jesse. Jess was visibly emotional, her voice trembling as she spoke about how much she missed Jesse. The police searched Jess's apartment and belongings for any evidence linking her to the crime. They found a few items that raised suspicion, including a silk scarf similar to the one used to strangle Jesse. This discovery made Jess a prime suspect, despite her emotional pleas of innocence. Jess's reaction to the interrogation was a mix of sorrow and anxiety. She was cooperative but clearly distressed, repeatedly expressing her love for Jesse and her disbelief that she was a suspect. The police noted her emotional volatility and the contradictions in her statements, which added to their suspicion. As the investigation progressed, the detectives kept Jess Owens under close scrutiny. They knew her complicated relationship with Jesse and her emotional instability could be key to solving the case. Jess remained a central figure in their search for the truth behind Jesse Harper's tragic death. On August 20, 2010, 5 days after Jesse Harper's murder, the weather in Athens, Georgia, was hot and humid. The police were still hard at work trying to solve the case. That morning, a breakthrough came when a maintenance worker found a small piece of paper in the hallway near Jesse's apartment. The paper appeared to be a torn note with handwriting on it. He quickly handed the note over to Detective Michael Reynolds and Officer Sarah Thompson, who were still investigating the case. The note read, Meet me at 8. We need to talk. J. The detectives believed the note was written by Jess Owens. The handwriting was similar to Jess's, and the detectives knew that J was how Jess signed her notes to Jesse. This new piece of evidence shifted the focus back to Jess Owens. The note suggested that she had planned to meet Jesse on the night of the murder. Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson re-interviewed Jess Owens, presenting her with the note. Jess looked shocked and admitted that she had written the note, but insisted she had not met Jesse that night. Jess's reaction was a mix of fear and confusion. She repeated her earlier statements about being at home and feeling unwell. Despite her claims, the detectives felt they were getting closer to the truth. They decided to take a closer look at Jess's phone records and text messages. They found several messages between Jess and Jesse, showing a pattern of arguments and reconciliation. The last message from Jess to Jesse read, I'll be there at 8. We need to sort this bleep out. The detectives also revisited the evidence collected from Jess's apartment. They re-examined the silk scarf they have found, comparing it to the one used to strangle Jesse. Forensic tests showed that both scarves were from the same set, a limited edition sold at a local boutique where both women had shopped. With this new evidence, the detectives were more convinced than ever that Jess Owens was hiding something. They continued to press her, hoping to uncover the full truth about what had happened on the night of August 15. The discovery of the torn note was a significant step forward in the investigation, bringing the police closer to solving the mystery of Jesse Harper's tragic death. The third suspect in Jesse Harper's murder was Maximo Lorona Rodriguez, a 35-year-old local gang leader. Known for his violent past and current involvement in criminal activities, Maximo had a reputation for being both ambitious and controlling. He had a tumultuous relationship with Jess before they broke up, but he never fully moved on and continued to harbor strong feelings for her. On August 21, 2010, the Athens Police Department decided to bring Maximo in for questioning. The weather that day was sweltering, with temperatures soaring into the high 80s. Detective Michael Reynolds and Officer Sarah Thompson knew that interviewing Maximo would be challenging given his criminal background and notorious temper. Maximo arrived at the police station, his demeanor guarded and intimidating. Detective Reynolds started the questioning by asking about his relationship with Jesse Harper. Maximo spoke in a low, firm voice, describing how he and Jesse had once been close but had drifted apart after she got married. He admitted that he was still upset about their breakup and had difficulty letting go, but he denied having any involvement in her death. The detectives pressed Maximo about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Maximo claimed he had been with his gang members at a local bar, The Globe, a well-known spot in downtown Athens. He provided names of several individuals who could vouch for him. Despite his alibi, Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson were skeptical. They knew that Maximo's gang could easily cover for him if he was involved in a crime. The police checked Maximo's alibi by interviewing patrons and staff at The Globe.
Some confirmed seeing him there, but the timeline was fuzzy, leaving gaps that could not be accounted for. Additionally, the police found no physical evidence linking Maximo directly to the crime scene, but his volatile nature and unresolved feelings for Jesse kept him under suspicion. Maximo's reaction during the interrogation was a mix of anger and frustration. He was cooperative to an extent, but became increasingly agitated when the detectives suggested he might have a motive for killing Jesse. He vehemently denied any wrongdoing, insisting he was being targeted because of his past. Despite Maximo's strong denials, the detectives remained cautious. They knew that his history of violence and his lingering emotions for Jesse made him a potential suspect. They continued to gather evidence and monitor his activities, hoping to find something that could either incriminate or exonerate him. On August 25, 2010, the Athens Police Department made a breakthrough in the Jesse Harper murder case. The day was hot and sultry, with temperatures reaching into the low 90s. Detective Michael Reynolds and Officer Sarah Thompson were going through the evidence once again when it received the final forensic report. The report confirmed that the fingerprints on the silk scarf used to strangle Jesse matched those of Jess Owens. With this crucial piece of evidence, police were now confident that Jess Owens was the murderer. Jess, 27, had been Jesse's co-worker and secret lover. She was known for her friendly and sensitive nature, but struggled with jealousy and insecurity about Jesse's relationship with her husband, Dan Harper. Jess's emotions had spiraled out of control, leading her to commit the crime. Jess's motive was a combination of love, fear, and desperation. She couldn't bear the thought of losing Jesse to Dan. On the night of the murder, Jess went to Jesse's apartment, hoping to resolve their issues. However, the conversation quickly turned into a heated argument. In a fit of rage and desperation, Jess grabbed one of Jesse's silk scarves and strangled her. Detective Reynolds and Officer Thompson reviewed the timeline and evidence carefully before making their move. They knew they needed to arrest Jess before she could flee or destroy more evidence. The police arrived at Jess's apartment in the late afternoon, when the heat of the day had started to wane. Jess Owens was taken by surprise when the officers knocked on her door. She opened it, looking anxious and tired. The detectives informed her of the charges and placed her under arrest. Jess's reaction was a mix of shock and resignation. She didn't resist and was quietly taken to the police station. News of Jess's arrest spread quickly through Athens. Jesse Harper's family were relieved that the murderer had been caught, but heartbroken to learn it was someone Jesse had trusted and loved. The community, too, was shaken by the revelation that Jess Owens, a seemingly gentle and kind woman, could commit such a violent act. As Jess was led away in handcuffs, she seemed to accept her fate. The police had uncovered the truth, and justice for Jesse Harper was now within reach. The arrest of Jess Owens marked a significant step in the case, bringing closure to Jesse's grieving family and friends. The trial of Jess Owens began on October 15, 2010, in Athens, Georgia. The courtroom was packed with media, friends, and family, all eager to see justice served for Jesse Harper. The prosecutor, Lisa Bennett, was a determined 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough on crime. She opened the case by presenting the evidence against Jess, including the forensic report and the silk scarf used to strangle Jesse. Lisa argued that Jess's jealousy and desperation led her to commit the murder. The defense attorney, Laird Stevens, a 50-year-old known for his calm and collected demeanor, argued that Jess Owens had acted in a moment of emotional turmoil and did not intend to kill Jesse. He emphasized Jess's emotional instability and tried to paint her as a victim of her own feelings. He called on character witnesses to testify about Jess's generally kind and gentle nature, hoping to elicit sympathy from the jury. Throughout the trial, Jesse Harper's family sat in the front row, visibly emotional. Her mother, Carol Harper, often clutched a photo of Jesse, tears streaming down her face. The trial brought back painful memories for them, but they remained hopeful that justice would be served. The jury deliberated for 3 days, carefully considering all the evidence and arguments. On October 25, 2010, they reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the jury foreman stood up and announced the decision. Jess Owens was found guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict brought a mix of relief and sadness to Jesse's family. They were glad that justice had been served, but were also deeply saddened by the tragic circumstances. The judge sentenced Jess Owens to 25 years in prison. As the sentence was read, Jess showed little emotion. She seemed resigned to her fate, understanding that her actions had irreversible consequences. The severity of the sentence was seen as appropriate by many, given the premeditated nature of the crime. The media covered the trial extensively, with local news stations like LUSB TV and newspapers like the Athens Banner Herald reporting on every detail. The public reaction was mixed. Some felt the sentence was just, while others believed it was too lenient, considering the loss of Jesse Harper's life. The trial and its outcome had a profound impact on all those involved. For Jesse's family, it marked the end of a painful chapter, but the loss they felt was permanent. The community of Athens was left to grapple with the reality that such a tragic event could occur in their town. After the trial of Jess Owens, light slowly began to move on for everyone involved, but the impact of Jesse Harper's murder was lasting. Jesse's family, particularly her mother, struggled with the grief of losing their vibrant daughter. Dan Harper, Jesse's husband, faced a different kind of aftermath. He had lost not only his wife, but also his reputation was tainted by the scandal of the love triangle. Dan, who had been a respected retired photography professor, decided to move to a smaller town in North Georgia to start anew. He spent his days focusing on his health and his passion for photography, hoping to find peace in his work. Jess Owens began serving her 25-year sentence at the Pulaski State Prison. She enrolled in educational programs and sought therapy to address her emotional issues. Jess's time in prison was marked by self-reflection and an effort to understand the depth of her actions and their consequences. She often expressed remorse for what she had done, writing letters to Jesse's family in hopes of finding some form of redemption. The Athens community was also affected by the murder and the trial. Local businesses, including the Starbucks where Jesse and Jess had worked, held a memorial for Jesse. Friends and coworkers gathered to share memories and honor her life. The case had brought the community closer, reminding everyone of the importance of supporting one another in times of tragedy. Maximo Lorona Rodriguez, once a suspect, faced his own legal battles unrelated to Jesse's murder. He continued to be involved in gang-related activities and was eventually convicted for his previous crimes. His life took a different path, but the investigation into Jesse's murder had brought his violent past into the spotlight. Life after the trial was about healing and finding ways to move forward for all those touched by Jesse Harper's tragic death. The community of Athens, along with Jesse's friends and family, worked to honor her memory and support each other through the lasting pain of their loss. The first victim was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old woman who had a remarkable life story. Born in Flint, Michigan, in 1920, Dana grew up in a working-class family during the Great Depression. She had a natural talent for nursing and enrolled in the Army Nurse Corps at the age of 18. She was deployed to Europe during World War II, where she witnessed the horrors of war firsthand. She was one of the few nurses who survived the Battle of the Bulge, the deadliest battle in American history. She received several medals for her bravery and service. After the war, Dana continued her nursing career and worked in various hospitals and clinics across the country. She married her high school sweetheart, Frank Carlile, and had 2 children, Mark and Lisa. She was a devoted mother and grandmother and always had a smile on her face. She loved to read, knit, and watch her favorite show, The Golden Girls. She was also an avid fan of the Detroit Tigers and never missed a game. Dana moved to the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in 2003 after her husband passed away from a heart attack. She wanted to be closer to her daughter, Lisa, who lived in Tampa. She quickly made friends with the other residents and the staff, who admired her cheerful attitude and her compassion for others. She was a leader and a mentor, and often organized activities and events for the nursing home. She had a dream of creating a safe and loving community for the elderly where they could enjoy their golden years with respect and dignity. But Dana's dream would be shattered one July day. Another elderly victim who had trusted their life to the staff of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home located in a quiet suburb of Pinellas Park. Someone had a sinister plan to end their lives, and the motive would be shocking. It was a scorching day in July of 2004 when a gruesome discovery was made at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida. The nursing home was a peaceful and comfortable place for the elderly, surrounded by palm trees and flowers. But on that day, a dark shadow fell over the facility as one of its residents was found murdered in her room. The victim was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old woman who had lived a remarkable life. She was a war hero, a nurse, a mother, and a friend to many. She had moved to the nursing home a year ago, after losing her husband of 60 years. She had adjusted well to her new home and was loved by the staff and the other residents. She was always cheerful, kind, and helpful, and had a zest for life that was contagious. But someone had snuffed out that life in a brutal and senseless way. There were no signs of forced entry, robbery, or sexual assault. It seemed like a random and motiveless crime that left everyone baffled and terrified. The person who found Dana's body was Robert J. Merkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. Robert and Dana had become close friends after meeting at a bingo night. They shared a lot of interests and hobbies such as reading, gardening, and watching reruns of Matlock and Happy Days. They often had dinner together and chatted for hours. But his was shattered when he went to visit Dana in her room that morning. He knocked on her door, but there was no answer. He opened the door and saw her lying on her bed, motionless. He thought she was sleeping and gently called her name. But when he got closer, he realized she was not breathing. He touched her face and felt how cold she was. He screamed and ran to get help. The staff arrived soon after and confirmed that Dana was dead. Robert was in shock and could not stop crying. He told the staff everything he knew about Dana and how much he cared for her. He had no idea who would want to hurt her or why. He was heartbroken and felt guilty for not being able to protect her. But Robert was not the only one who was grieving. The entire nursing home was in mourning and in fear. Dana was the first victim, but not the last. More residents would be killed in the next 2 weeks. The killer was still at large and had a twisted agenda. Who was behind these murders and what was their motive? The answer would shock everyone and expose a web of lies, greed, and revenge. Within minutes of the discovery of Dana Carlile's body, the police were on the scene at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida. The nursing home was a modern and spacious facility with a capacity of 120 residents. It had a reputation of providing quality care and comfort for the elderly, but on that day, it became the site of a horrific crime that would shock the community. The lead investigators of the case were Detective Jackson and Detective Rokeby, two seasoned and respected detectives from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. They had worked together for over a decade and had solved many high-profile cases, such as the infamous Clearwater serial killer, who had terrorized the city in 2002. They were known for their professionalism, dedication, and intuition. They arrived at the nursing home and were greeted by the staff and the residents, who were visibly shaken and distraught. They were escorted to Dana's room, where they found her lying on her bed, covered with a white sheet. They lifted the sheet and saw her pale and lifeless face. She looked peaceful, as if she had died in her sleep. But the detectives knew better. They noticed a small puncture mark on her arm and a syringe on the floor. They also found a bottle of pain pills on her nightstand with a prescription label that read, Dana Carlile, OxyContin, 10 milligrams. Take one every 4 hours as needed for pain. The detectives quickly realized that Dana had been killed by an overdose of pain pills, a method that was unusual and suspicious. They wondered who had access to her medication and why they would want to harm her. They also wondered if there were any other victims or if Dana was targeted for a specific reason. They had a lot of questions and few answers. They decided to interview the staff and the residents and to review the security footage and the records of the nursing home. They hoped to find some clues and to catch the killer before they struck again. But they were too late. Dana was the first victim, but not the last. The killer was still on the loose and had a sinister plan. The investigation of the murder of Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old resident of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, took a shocking turn when the police identified the first suspect. He was Robert J. Merkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. He was not only Dana's friend, but also her secret lover. Their affair had started in 2001 when they were both married to other people. They had kept their relationship hidden from their spouses, their families, and their friends. Robert's wife, Helen, had died in 2002 after a long battle with Alzheimer's disease. She had been living in a different nursing home
where Robert had visited her every week. He had felt guilty for cheating on her, but he could not resist his feelings for Dana. He had hoped to start a new life with her after Helen's death. But Dana's husband, Frank, had outlived Helen by a year. He had suffered a heart attack in 2003 and had passed away in his sleep. He had been a loving and faithful husband to Dana, and a proud father and grandfather to their children and grandchildren. He had been unaware of Dana's affair and had trusted her completely. Dana had moved to the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in 2003 after Frank's death. She had wanted to be closer to her daughter, Lisa, who lived in Tampa. She had also wanted to be with Robert, who had moved there a few months earlier. They had finally been free to be together, without any secrets or lies. They had been happy and had enjoyed their time at the nursing home. They had also been sexually intimate many times and had expressed their love for each other. But their happiness was short-lived. On July 15, 2004, Dana was found dead in her room, killed by an overdose of pain pills. The police arrived at the scene and questioned Robert as a witness. He had been the one who had discovered her body and had called for help. He had claimed that he had gone to see her that morning, as he usually did, and had found her unresponsive. He had said that he had been shocked and saddened by her death, and that he had no idea who would want to harm her. But the police were not convinced by his story. They had noticed some inconsistencies and contradictions in his statements. They had also found some evidence that linked him to the crime. They had found his fingerprints on the syringe and the bottle of pain pills that had been used to kill Dana. They had also found a note in his room that read, "I'm sorry, Dana. I love you, but I can't live without you. Forgive me." They accused him of killing Dana out of jealousy or desperation. They speculated that he had feared that she would leave him, or that he had wanted to end their suffering. They interrogated him for hours, trying to get confession or a motive. But Robert remained calm and composed, and denied any involvement in the murder. He said that he loved Dana and that he would never hurt her. He said that the note was a suicide note that he had written a long time ago but had never acted on. He said that the fingerprints were a coincidence and that he had no access to the pain pills. He said that he was innocent and that someone else had killed Dana. But who and why? The police had no other suspects or leads. Was Robert really the killer, or was he a scapegoat? Was this a crime of passion or a cover-up? Was there more to this case than met the eye? The answer would shock everyone and reveal a dark and twisted plot that involved corruption, conspiracy, and revenge. The murder of Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old resident of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, was a shocking and tragic event. But it was only the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt the nursing home for weeks. The killer was not done yet and had a list of targets. The next victim was Robert J. Merkowski, a 91-year-old man who was also a resident of the nursing home. He was not only Dana's friend, but also her secret lover. Robert was under suspicion for Dana's murder, but he maintained his innocence. He said that he loved Dana and that he would never hurt her. He said that someone else had killed her and framed him. He said that he had no motive, no access, and no evidence. He said that he was a scapegoat and that the real killer was still on the loose. But the police did not believe him. They thought that he had killed Dana out of jealousy or desperation. They thought that he had feared that she would leave him, or that he had wanted to end their suffering. To them, he was the killer, and they had caught him. But they were wrong. Robert was not the killer, but the next victim. He was found dead in his bed, also overdosed on pain pills, just 2 days after his arrest. His death confirmed the suspicions of the detectives. It was clear that these deaths were not suicides, but cold-blooded murders. The investigation took a sinister turn as the police realized that they were dealing with a serial killer within the nursing home. A serial killer who had a list of targets and a twisted agenda. A serial killer who was not done yet and who had identity that would shock everyone. The breakthrough in the investigation of the murders of Dana Carlile and Robert J. Merkowski, 2 residents of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, came on a stormy night when the police searched the nursing home for clues. They stumbled upon a hidden stash of secret recordings that revealed a dark and disturbing truth.
The recordings were made by Carlile Berley, a 38-year-old single mother of 3 who worked as an aide at the nursing home. She had a secret hobby that involved recording the intimate and sexual moments of the residents without their consent or knowledge. She had installed hidden cameras and microphones in their rooms and had captured their most private and personal moments, including sex. She had then sold these recordings online, mainly to Japan, where there was a high demand for sexual material involving the elderly. She had made an estimated $15,000 from this illegal and immoral activity and had no remorse or guilt. But her scheme had backfired when she had recorded Dana and Robert. She had not known that they were lovers and had been surprised by their affair. She had also been afraid that they had discovered her secret and had threatened to expose her. She had panicked and had decided to kill them before they could ruin her. She had used her access to their medication and had injected them with a lethal dose of pain pills. She had then planted the evidence to make it look like Robert had killed Dana, and then himself. She had thought that she had gotten away with it and had continued her explicit recordings. But she had not counted on the police, who had found her stash and had traced it back to her. They had exposed her as the killer and as the mastermind behind a sick and twisted business. In the midst of the investigation into the chilling series of murders at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home, a breakthrough occurred. The focus shifted to Carlile Berley, a 38-year-old single mother of 3 and an aide at the nursing home. As the police interrogated her, a complex and troubled past began to unravel. Carlile's story was one of desperation and a relentless desire to provide for her family. It was revealed that she had a history of drug addiction, a battle she fought fiercely while trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. However, her involvement in the production and distribution of sexually explicit recordings added a sinister layer to her already troubled life. During the interrogation, Carlile's emotions were palpable. Anger, fear, and regret danced across her face as she struggled to maintain composure. The weight of her actions bore down on her, and she knew that the consequences would be severe. The detectives pressed her for answers, seeking to unravel the truth hidden beneath her troubled exterior. The investigation took a dark turn as the police delved further into Carlile's life. They discovered a web of connections, linking her to a network of individuals involved in the production and distribution of secret sexually explicit materials, specifically of the elderly. It was a world shrouded in secrecy, operating under the radar of law enforcement. As the media caught wind of the case, news blared with sensationalism. The local newspaper, the Pinellas Park Gazette, dedicated coverage to the shocking revelations, captivating the community. As the investigation continued, the detectives meticulously pieced together the puzzle, uncovering the truth behind the series of murders. The case would go down in history as one of the most shocking and disturbing crimes to rock Pinellas Park. After months of investigation, the police finally cracked the case of the nursing home murders. The killer was none other than Carlile Berley, a 38-year-old aide who worked at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home. She was arrested on July 29, 2004, and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Carlile Berley had a dark secret that she was desperate to hide. She was involved in a lucrative but illegal business of making and selling sexually explicit recordings of the elderly residents to Japan. She used hidden cameras and microphones to capture the intimate moments of the unsuspecting victims. The first of her targets was Dana Carlile, an 84-year-old former nurse who served in World War II. Dana was a beloved figure at the nursing home, known for her kindness and compassion. She had a secret romance with Robert J. Merkowski, a 91-year-old widower. Carlile Berley saw them as an opportunity to make more money and recorded their sexual encounters. However, Carlile's scheme was almost discovered by Dana. Carlile panicked and decided to silence Dana by overdosing her on pain pills. She staged the scene to look like a suicide and hoped to escape suspicion. But Robert, who found Dana's body, was heartbroken and suspicious. He told the police that Dana would never kill herself and that he suspected foul play. Carlile realized that Robert was a loose end and decided to eliminate him as well. She used the same method of overdosing him on pain pills and made it look like another suicide. But the police were not convinced. They noticed the similarities between the two deaths and launched a thorough investigation. They found traces of Carlile's fingerprints and DNA on the pill bottles and the victims' bodies. They also discovered her hidden stash of recordings and traced her connection to a Japanese website, karaishasexy.gp. The police arrested Carlile Berley and had charged her with 2 counts of first-degree murder and several counts of invasion of privacy, extortion, and fraud. They had also seized her recordings and had contacted the authorities in Japan to track down the buyers. She claimed that she was driven by financial desperation and that she loved her family. She said that she regretted her actions and asked for forgiveness. But the police and the victims' families were not moved by her words. They said that she was a cold-blooded killer who preyed on the vulnerable and betrayed their trust. The courtroom drama unfolded as the trial of Carlile Berley, the accused murderer of the Raleigh Meadows nursing home killings, reached its climax. The prosecution, led by the relentless prosecutor Jane Carolborg, presented a compelling case against Berley. With attention to detail, Carolborg painted a vivid picture of the events that unfolded in the sweltering summer of July 2004. The trial, held in the Pinellas Park Courthouse, drew significant local media attention. Journalists from local newspapers, such as the Pinellas Tribune, were eager to report on the sensational case. The families of the victims, Dana Carlile and Robert J. Merkowski, sat anxiously in the gallery, hoping for justice to be served. The prosecution's case relied heavily on forensic evidence and eyewitness testimonies. Expert witnesses, including renowned medical examiner Dr. Samantha Collins, testified about the cause of death and the presence of pain pills in the victims' bodies. The prosecution also presented phone records and surveillance footage from the nursing home, which placed Berley at the scene of the crimes. Defense attorney Janelle Lavrov, known for his fierce advocacy, fought tirelessly to protect his client's rights. Lavrov argued that the evidence against Berley was circumstantial and lacked a direct link to the murders. He questioned the credibility of the witnesses and raised doubts about the motives attributed to Berley. Finally, after careful deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The judge, Honorable Paul Thompson, announced that Carlile Berley was found guilty on multiple counts of murder. Gasps filled the courtroom as the families of the victims embraced each other, finding solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. As Berley was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, the media frenzy intensified. News outlets across Tampa Bay reported on the trial, dissecting the evidence and analyzing the motives behind the killings. The case became a cautionary tale, highlighting the need for increased security measures in nursing homes and the potential dangers of hidden secrets. In the aftermath of the trial, the lives of all those involved were forever changed. The shocking series of murders that took place at the Raleigh Meadows nursing home in Pinellas Park, Florida, in July of 2004 left a lasting impact on the community and beyond. Journalists from across the Tampa area flocked to Pinellas Park, eager to report on the sensational details of the trial. The local newspaper, the Pinellas Park Gazette, dedicated coverage to the trial with headlines like "Justice Served," "Berley Convicted of Murder," and "The Berley Trial. A community's healing begins." The impact of these horrific crimes extended beyond the courtroom. The Raleigh Meadows nursing home, once a place of care and comfort, became infamous in the community. The residents and their families were left questioning the safety and security of nursing homes across the country. The tragedy prompted a conversation about the need for stricter regulations and oversight in elder care facilities. In response to the murders, the Raleigh Meadows nursing home implemented a series of security measures to prevent future tragedies. The facility installed state-of-the-art surveillance cameras, increased staff training on recognizing signs of abuse or neglect, and implemented stricter visitor policies. These changes aim to restore trust within the community and ensure the safety and well-being of the residents. As the years passed, the wounds inflicted by these heinous crimes slowly began to heal. The victims' families found solace in knowing that justice had been served, while the community rallied together to support one another through the difficult process of healing.
The memory of the Rowley Meadows nursing home murders remains a somber reminder of the need for vigilance and compassion in caring for our elderly population. In this episode of True Crime Case Files, we delved into the chilling series of murders that struck the Rowley Meadows nursing home. The lives of Dana Carlile and Robert J. Merkowski were tragically cut short by Carly Berley, a single mother driven by desperation and a dark secret. As we reflect on this harrowing tale, let us remember the victims and the resilience of those who survived. Stay tuned for more gripping true crime stories on True Crime Case Files. In the summer of 2001, as the world slowly adjusted to the new millennium, Ray Truscott, a 53-year-old life insurance analyst from Plano, Texas, was preparing to celebrate a milestone that many couples dream of but few reach: his 20th wedding anniversary. Ray, a father of 3, was known in his community as a man of integrity and dedication. He had built a stable career at New Life Financial, a reputable firm known for its competitive edge in the bustling Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. A graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, Ray had climbed the ranks through sheer determination and a knack for numbers. His colleagues often described him as the first to arrive and the last to leave the office, a testament to his work ethic. Ray's life at home was no less exemplary. His wife, Dina, and their children were the center of his world. Neighbors would often see the Truscott family at community events or hear about their travels to places like the Grand Canyon or Disney World, the latter being featured in a 2001 Disney vacation planning VHS that had just been released. Ray's personality was a blend of the analytical mind of an insurance analyst and the warm heart of a family man. He was known for his dry wit, often referencing the latest Dilbert comic strip, which amusingly captured the quirks of corporate culture. His dreams, though, were not confined to spreadsheets and actuarial tables. Ray aspired to see his children graduate from college and to one day retire to a quiet life, perhaps in the Texas Hill Country, where he and Dina could enjoy their golden years. In the days leading up to his death, Ray was seen in high spirits, even mentioning to his neighbor about his anticipation for the U2 Elevation Tour concert, scheduled for later that year. He had been meticulously planning the anniversary cruise, set to embark from Galveston, Texas, aboard the majestic Voyager of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean vessel famed for its luxurious amenities and scenic routes. Little did anyone know that this journey, meant to celebrate 2 decades of love and commitment, would be his last. On the morning of June 15, 2001, as the Voyager of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean cruise liner, cut through the tranquil waters of the Gulf of Mexico, an unsettling discovery was made that would mar the ship's record of idyllic voyages. It was approximately 7:30 a.m. when the body of Ray Truscott, a 53-year-old life insurance analyst from Plano, Texas, was spotted by a fishing boat, the Sea Sprite, captained by Marcus Caldwell. The vessel, a common sight in these waters, was out for its regular trawl when it stumbled upon the grim scene. The weather was uncharacteristically mild for a June morning, with a soft breeze that offered little solace to the crew of the Sea Sprite as they grappled with their find. Captain Caldwell, a seasoned mariner, was taken aback by the sight of the lifeless body bobbing in the gentle swells. His initial shock quickly turned to action as he radioed the Coast Guard, his voice steadied but tinged with the gravity of the situation. The crew, maintaining their composure, secured the area to preserve the integrity of what was now a crime scene. The discovery sent ripples through the media, with local news channels like KHU interrupting their regular programming to report on the incident. The cruise ship, which had set sail from Galveston, a port city still bustling with tourists flocking to attractions like Moody Gardens and the recently opened Schlitterbahn water park, was now the center of a tragic narrative. As the news of the discovery reached the ship, passengers who had been enjoying amenities such as the ship's ice skating rink and mini golf course were struck by a palpable sense of disbelief. The vacationers, many of whom were Texans looking to escape the early summer heat, were now witnesses to a real-life drama unfolding in the midst of their leisure. The serene morning of June 15, 2001, aboard the Voyager of the Seas was abruptly shattered when word of Ray Truscott's untimely death reached the ship's captain. Within hours, the vessel, a floating city that boasted a rock-climbing wall and an opulent dining hall, transformed into a somber crime scene. The U.S. Coast Guard, alongside the FBI, tasked with investigating crimes on international waters, quickly dispatched their best agents to the ship, which was now anchored off the coast of Galveston, Texas. Detective Corrine Henning and Detective George Givens were among the first to arrive. Henning, with a reputation for her unerring gut instinct, and Givens, known for his methodical approach to crime solving,
stepped onto the ship with a sense of urgency. The media frenzy had already begun, with outlets broadcasting live updates, fueling public interest and speculation. The detectives made their way to stateroom 7156, the last known location of the victim. To their seasoned eyes, the interior of the room appeared undisturbed, the bed neatly made, and personal effects arranged as if awaiting their owner's return. However, the balcony presented a stark contrast. Chairs were overturned, and a single glass lay shattered, its fragments catching the morning light, a silent testament to the struggle that had occurred. The crime scene was meticulously processed. Forensic teams dusted for fingerprints, combed through fibers, and collected DNA samples, while the ship's CCTV footage was seized for review. The investigators' presence was a solemn reminder to the passengers that their idyllic retreat had been breached by violence. As the investigation unfolded, the world outside continued its pace. In the background, faint sounds could be heard from the ship's onboard entertainment system, a hit song of the time, now a jarring soundtrack to a tragedy. The detectives, unfazed by the ship's grandeur or the distractions of the media, focused on the grim task at hand, piecing together the final moments of Ray Truscott's life and identifying his killer. As the Voyager of the Seas remained anchored, a mere silhouette against the June sky, the investigation into Ray Truscott's death turned to those closest to him. Dina Truscott, 51, the victim's wife of 20 years, became the focus of intense scrutiny. Known for her gentle demeanor and her role as a devoted homemaker, Dina was the archetype of suburban tranquility in Plano, Texas, a city that prided itself on being one of the best places to live in America. According to a CNN Money magazine feature that year, Dina's life was seemingly filled with PDA meetings and Sunday family barbecues. Her dreams were modest, a happy family, a comfortable home, and the joy of seeing her children succeed. Yet, beneath the veneer of domestic bliss, detectives wondered if there lay a motive for murder. The interrogation was conducted away from the prying eyes of the public, who were busy discussing the case on internet forums, a burgeoning trend in the early 2000s. Detectives Henning and Givens, in a room with views of the endless ocean, questioned Dina. Her responses were punctuated by moments of confusion and long pauses. She struggled to account for her whereabouts at the time her husband was believed to have been thrown overboard. Her alibi, that she had been asleep in their stateroom, offered little in the way of corroboration. Despite her seemingly oblivious nature, Dina's reactions during the interrogation raised suspicion. Was her demeanor a mask for something more sinister, or simply the shock of a grieving widow? The detectives took note of her every word and gesture, aware that in cases such as these, the truth was often hidden in plain sight. As the investigation continued, the question remained, was Dina Truscott a heartbroken spouse or a cunning adversary? The inquiry into Ray Truscott's death intensified as the focus shifted to Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old colleague of the victim. Hackles, a seasoned insurance analyst at New Life Financial, was aboard the Voyager of the Seas with his family. His outward persona was that of an affable family man, yet beneath this facade was a clandestine relationship with Ray that, if exposed, could upend his life. Hackles' presence on the cruise was ostensibly for leisure, alongside his Russian wife, Irina, and their 2 children. However, investigators suspected that his true motive may have been rooted in the tangled web of his secret romantic involvement with the victim. The early 2000s were a time of contrasting attitudes towards such relationships, with television shows like Will and Grace bringing LGBTQ themes into mainstream media. Yet many still faced societal pressures to conform to traditional family structures. During the interrogation, Hackles maintained a calm exterior, answering questions with measured responses. Hackles was unflappable, even as detectives probed for a crack in his composure, seeking to understand the nature of his relationship with Ray and the potential for jealousy or betrayal to have driven him to murder. The police were methodical in their approach, aware that the success of shows like CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, which had captivated audiences with its portrayal of forensic science, had raised public expectations for swift and conclusive detective work. They scrutinized Hackles' alibi, cross-referencing it with witness statements and security footage, determined to uncover whether his calm was a facade for a more turbulent inner turmoil. As the investigation delved deeper, the question loomed: could Bob Hackles, the man who shared whispered confidences and stolen moments with Ray Truscott, be capable of ending the life of the man he loved? On June 17, 2001, 2 days after the discovery of Ray Truscott's body, a new piece of evidence surfaced aboard the Voyager of the Seas. The morning was marked by a gentle Gulf breeze as a crew member, performing routine maintenance along the starboard side of the ship, noticed something unusual. Caught on a piece of protruding metalwork was a fragment of fabric, navy blue, with a distinctive pattern that matched a shirt belonging to Bob Hackles, one of the prime suspects in the case. The finding was a potential turning point in the investigation, a tangible clue in a case that had thus far offered few. The fragment was immediately secured and sent for forensic analysis, with the hope that it might yield DNA or other materials that could link the suspect to the crime scene. The media, always hungry for a new angle on the story, began to speculate on the implications of this development. The FBI agents, well-versed in the nuances of evidence collection and its role in building a case, treated the discovery with the gravity it deserved. The weather, which had been a mix of sun and cloud, seemed to mirror the uncertainty that hung over the ship as passengers and crew alike pondered the significance of the find. As the news of the fabric fragment reached the mainland, it became a topic of discussion on news programs, where anchors dissected the latest developments with legal experts. The cruise ship, once a symbol of escape and relaxation, had become the backdrop for a narrative that was as gripping as any summer blockbuster, with the added weight of real-world consequence. The investigators, for their part, continued their meticulous work, aware that in the world of criminal justice, unlike the instant gratification of winning a game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, patience and thoroughness were the keys to uncovering the truth. The investigation's next chapter unfolded as attention turned to Carl Balhines, a 49-year-old librarian from Largo, Florida, whose connection to Ray Truscott added another layer of complexity to the case. Carl, a seemingly unassuming man, was revealed to have been entwined in a secret romantic liaison with Ray, a fact unknown to both Dina Truscott and Bob Hackles, the other suspects in this unfolding drama. On board the Voyager of the Seas, Carl's demeanor stood in contrast to the ship's vibrant atmosphere, which typically buzzed with the excitement of vacationing families and couples. His quiet, introspective nature belied the depth of his involvement with Ray, and as the FBI delved into his background, they uncovered a man who dreamed of a life less ordinary. Yearning for acceptance in a world that was just beginning to embrace diversity in love and relationships. In the interview room, Carl's emotions were palpable. He vacillated between anger and profound sadness, his dreams of a future with Ray now irreparably shattered. For Carl, there was no escape from the harsh glare of suspicion that now shone upon him. His responses to the FBI's probing questions were tinged with desperation as he struggled to reconcile his clandestine relationship with the brutal end it had met. As the investigation wore on, the public followed the case with the same fervor as they did the unfolding saga of Gary Condit and Chandra Levy, a scandal that dominated the news cycles. The question on everyone's mind was whether Carl Balhines, a man who sought solace in the quiet corridors of a library, could be capable of a crime as loud as murder. The investigation aboard the Voyager of the Seas culminated in a revelation that pierced the veil of mystery surrounding Ray Truscott's death. Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old insurance analyst and secret romantic partner of the victim, emerged as the perpetrator. The evidence painstakingly gathered by the FBI pointed irrefutably to a crime of passion, a fatal encounter that transpired against the backdrop of the ship's grandeur in the Gulf of Mexico's expanse. Bob, known for his convivial demeanor and professional success, was a man whose outward life belied the turmoil within. His dreams of a concealed relationship with Ray, free from the scrutiny of society and the constraints of his own family, had been dashed by Ray's intention to leave him for Carl Balhines. The revelation had ignited a rage in Bob that culminated in a violent confrontation, ending with Ray's body being cast into the ocean's depths. The method was as brutal as it was definitive. Bob had pushed Ray from the balcony of their stateroom after a heated argument. The motive was clear, a mixture of jealousy, fear, and the unbearable prospect of losing Ray to another. The crime, devoid of weapons or premeditation, was an impulsive act that forever altered the course of several lives. As the news of the murderer's identity spread, the story became a subject of intense media scrutiny. Outlets like the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal typically focused on the economic downturn and the recently introduced tax cuts by President George W. Bush, now found space on their front pages for the sordid details of the case. Bob Hackles, once a respected member of his professional community, now faced the stark reality of his actions. His life, once interwoven with the fabric of Ray's, had unraveled in a moment of uncontrolled fury. The question of why a man would commit such an act hung heavily in the air, a reminder of the fragile nature of the human psyche. The climactic turn in the investigation aboard the Voyager of the Seas came on the morning of June 20th, 2001. The skies above Galveston, Texas, were overcast, a somber reflection of the proceedings on the ship below. Bob Hackles, a 56-year-old insurance analyst and the man now known to have ended Ray Truscott's life, was taken into custody. The arrest, executed with precision by the FBI, was the culmination of days of meticulous investigation and evidence gathering. Hackles, who had maintained a veneer of composure throughout the interrogation process, met his fate with a quiet resignation. There was no dramatic outburst or plea for innocence. Instead, he seemed to have accepted the reality of his situation, perhaps aware that the weight of the evidence against him left little room for denial. The news of the arrest spread rapidly, with networks breaking into their regular programming to report the latest development. As Hackles was escorted off the ship in handcuffs, the passengers, who had been enjoying amenities like the ship's casino and Broadway-style shows, were now silent witnesses to the stark reality of justice being served. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of relief and morbid curiosity. Dina Truscott and her children, who had boarded the cruise to celebrate a milestone anniversary, were left to grapple with a complex mix of emotions. The revelation of Ray's secret life and the identity of his killer had torn through their family, leaving them to face a future marred by tragedy and public scrutiny. The trial of Bob Hackles, set against the backdrop of a post, Y2K America grappling with the tremors of a shifting global landscape, commenced with the gravity befitting a case that had captured the nation's attention. The courtroom, often a stage for the dramas of human conflict, was packed with journalists, each racing to feed the public's appetite for updates, much like the frenzy surrounding the release of Apple's iPod later that year. A device that promised to revolutionize the way we consumed media. Prosecutor Angelo Argelia, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for his relentless pursuit of justice, presented a narrative of betrayal and jealousy that had culminated in the tragic death of Ray Truscott. He painted Hackles as a man whose facade of normalcy was shattered by the revelation of his secret relationship and the prospect of its end. The defense, led by the astute Janet Pringles, countered with an appeal to the jury's sense of compassion, framing Hackles' actions as those of a man driven to the brink by emotional turmoil, not unlike the characters in the popular primetime drama The Sopranos, which delved into the complexities of the human psyche. As the trial unfolded, the victims' families sat in the gallery, their presence a silent testament to their loss. The emotional toll on Dina Truscott and her children was palpable, their grief compounded by the media circus that had descended upon their private tragedy. The verdict, when it came, was unanimous: guilty. The sentencing followed, with Hackles receiving a punishment that some deemed harsh, others lenient, but all recognized as the irreversible conclusion to a series of irrevocable choices. The courtroom, which had been a crucible of tension, released a collective breath as justice was pronounced. The aftermath of the verdict rippled through the Truscott family and friends, their reactions a mosaic of relief, vindication, and unending sorrow. The case, which had unfolded alongside the country's preoccupation with events like the brewing storm over the Enron scandal, left an indelible mark on all who had been touched by it. In the wake of the trial that concluded with Bob Hackles' conviction, the individuals connected to the tragedy aboard the Voyager of the Seas began the arduous process of moving forward. The Truscott family, their private grief made public, sought solace in the routines of daily life. Dina Truscott, once planning for an anniversary celebration, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding her family's world without Ray. The children grappled with the dual loss of their father and the family's untarnished image. Detective Corrine Henning and Detective George Gibbons, the law enforcement duo who had pieced together the case, continued their careers with the FBI, each carrying the weight of the Truscott case as a somber reminder of the complexities hidden within human relationships. The case had tested their resolve and proven their dedication to uncovering the truth. Carl Balhines returned to his life in Largo, Florida, his brief and secret romance with Ray now a closed chapter, its details buried in court documents and news archives. He sought anonymity, a return to the quietude of his profession, away from the sensationalism that had briefly thrust him into the public eye. The world outside, meanwhile, carried on at its relentless pace. The stock market, which had been in a state of flux since the dot-com bubble burst, continued to ebb and flow, a reflection of the nation's economic uncertainties. Brands like Nokia and Motorola dominated the mobile phone market, their devices a ubiquitous presence in the hands of those eager to stay connected in an increasingly digital age. As the years passed, the memory of the case faded from the public consciousness, replaced by new headlines and scandals.
Yet for those directly affected by the tragedy, the echoes of the past remained. They moved through their lives, each day a step further from the events on the ship, but forever aware of the indelible mark left by the case of Ray Truscott. As we close this chapter of True Crime Case Files, we're reminded of the unpredictable nature of the human heart. A voyage that began with celebration ended in tragedy, leaving us to ponder the line between love and obsession. Laura Wilkey, age 35, was a journalist with an unwavering determination to expose corruption. Running her blog, Ocala After Dark, she fearlessly investigated local true crime stories and political figures. Laura possessed a sharp wit and infectious laughter that drew people to her. In her spare time, she enjoyed painting landscapes and exploring the hidden gems of the city. During the hot summer of July 2007, Ocala was buzzing with activity. The city's annual music festival, Ocala Jam Fest, brought together music lovers from all over the state. Laura, always on the lookout for a captivating story, attended the festival, documenting the vibrant atmosphere and interviewing both the up-and-coming and established bands. Her blog post about the event garnered attention from music enthusiasts and fellow journalists alike. But Laura's true passion lay in exposing the underbelly of the city. She dug deep into the lives of local politicians, unearthing scandals and shining a light on their questionable dealings. Her investigative pieces, such as the mayor's hidden secrets and the dark side of Ocala's elite, became the talk of the town. The local newspaper, Ocala Gazette, even featured her work on the front page, acknowledging her relentless pursuit of truth. Laura's determination, however, came with risks. She received anonymous threats and warnings to stay away from certain individuals. Yet, she remained undeterred, convinced that the truth needed to be revealed. Her latest investigation involved a prominent car dealership owner, Jonathan Range Rover Reed, who was rumored to have ties to organized crime. Laura delved into his background, following a trail of suspicious transactions and connections that led her deeper into the dangerous underworld. Little did Laura know her relentless pursuit of justice would have dire consequences. On a sweltering July afternoon, she received a tip about a secret meeting between Reed and a corrupt city council member. Determined to capture the evidence, Laura set up surveillance near a local coffee shop, Brood Awakening. As she discreetly snapped photographs, she had no idea that someone was poisoning her, eventually leaving her bedridden and, finally, dead. On the scorching morning of July 12, 2007, tragedy struck the quiet city of Ocala, Florida. At precisely 9 a.m., Jay Wilkey, the husband of renowned journalist Laura Wilkey, made a horrifying discovery that would forever change his life. The day had started like any other in the Wilkey household. The sun beat down mercilessly on the small suburban neighborhood as residents sought refuge in the coolness of their air-conditioned homes. But little did Jay know that this day would mark the beginning of a dark and perplexing chapter in his life. As Jay entered the bedroom, he was met with a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his days. There, lying motionless on the neatly made bed, was Laura, his beloved wife. Her once vibrant eyes were now closed forever, and her body lay still, as if frozen in time. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by Jay's gasp of disbelief. The authorities were immediately summoned to the scene, their sirens piercing the otherwise tranquil neighborhood. As they meticulously combed through the room, searching for any clues that could shed light on this mysterious death, the air was thick with tension and uncertainty. In the days following Laura's untimely demise, the media frenzy surrounding the case reached a fever pitch. Headlines screamed with speculation, and armchair detectives dissected every detail, desperately trying to piece together the puzzle. News outlets like the Ocala Gazette and the Florida Times-Union dedicated countless column inches to the investigation, as the city held its breath, waiting for answers. As the investigation continued, the city of Ocala held its breath, anxiously awaiting the day when the truth behind Laura Wilkey's death would finally be unveiled. But for now, the answers remained elusive, shrouded in a web of secrecy and unanswered questions. In the heart of Ocala, a city known for its picturesque landscapes and vibrant community, a shocking crime took place that would leave the town in a state of disbelief. Laura Wilkey, a respected journalist and fearless investigator, met a tragic end on the scorching morning of July 12, 2007.
Detectives Olivia Gressel and Mark Hastur, renowned for their meticulous approach to investigations, swiftly arrived at the scene. The Ocala Police Department was determined to solve this heinous crime and bring justice to Laura and her grieving loved ones. As they entered the house, a sense of eerie calm hung in the air. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the killer had either been known to Laura or possessed a level of cunning that allowed them to gain access undetected. The detectives meticulously combed through every inch of the crime scene, searching for any clue that could shed light on Laura's untimely demise. The house appeared immaculately clean, as if someone had meticulously tidied up after the crime. However, their attention was soon drawn to the cause of death: poisoning. The exact substance used remained a mystery, leaving the investigators puzzled and determined to uncover the truth. With a keen eye for detail, the detectives photographed every inch of the crime scene, capturing potential DNA samples and any other evidence that could potentially lead them to the killer. They knew that in order to solve this perplexing case, they would need to leave no stone unturned. As the investigation unfolded, the town of Ocala was gripped with a sense of unease. The investigation into Laura Wilkey's murder would prove to be a complex puzzle, one that would challenge the detectives' skills and test their resolve. As the summer heat continued to bear down on Ocala, the search for the truth intensified, leaving the town anxiously awaiting the day when justice would finally be served. The initial focus of the investigation turned towards Jay Wilkey, a 49-year-old man who owned a flourishing gardening supply store in Ocala, Florida. Known for his friendly demeanor and charm, Jay was a familiar face in the community, often seen mingling with customers and offering expert advice on horticulture. However, beneath this amiable facade, there were whispers of a darker side. Detectives Olivia Gressel and Mark Hastur, leading the investigation, delved into Jay's relationship with his wife Laura, searching for any clues that could shed light on a possible motive. They meticulously pieced together the puzzle of their marriage, uncovering a history of turbulence and hidden tensions. Friends and acquaintances were interviewed, and a pattern of arguments and heated exchanges emerged. As the detectives delved deeper into Jay's personal life, they discovered a series of text messages exchanged between him and Laura in the weeks leading up to her tragic demise. The messages were from Laura begging Jay to not go near her, something that obviously indicated cracks in the foundation of their marriage. The detectives, determined to uncover the truth, obtained a warrant to search Jay's phone records, hoping to find more evidence that could connect him to Laura's murder. Simultaneously, the investigators scoured the city for any potential witnesses who may have seen or heard something on the day of the crime. They examined surveillance footage from nearby establishments, hoping to catch a glimpse of any suspicious individuals lurking in the vicinity of Laura's home. As the case gained media attention, tips flooded in from concerned citizens, each one meticulously followed up on by the diligent detectives. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation seemed to hit a dead end. The detectives meticulously reviewed every piece of evidence, re-examining the crime scene photographs and the DNA samples collected. They consulted with forensic experts, hoping for a breakthrough that would crack the case wide open. Despite the mounting pressure, Jay Wilkey vehemently maintained his innocence. He hired a high-profile defense attorney who spoke to the media on his behalf, proclaiming his client's unwavering belief that the truth would prevail. Clara Pointer, a 28-year-old co-worker and close friend of Laura Wilkey, emerged as a significant person of interest in the ongoing investigation into Laura's untimely death. Clara, like Laura, was a journalist, contributed articles for Laura's blog Ocala After Dark. She was known for her ambition and relentless pursuit of success. Mutual friends whispered about her burning desire to be the head of Ocala After Dark, the popular blog that Laura had built from the ground up. It was believed that Clara's envy of Laura's achievements may have fueled a sinister plot. During the police interrogation, Clara maintained an outwardly calm and collected demeanor, skillfully deflecting any suspicions that arose. She vehemently denied any involvement in Laura's murder, claiming that their friendship was genuine and that she had no reason to harm her colleague. Clara, for her part, pointed instead to Jay as the likely killer. She said Laura was deeply afraid of him, blaming him for the illness that led to her death. Clara said Laura repeatedly told her, "Don't let my husband near me. He wants me dead." However, the investigators uncovered some intriguing details that cast doubt on Clara's innocence. They have obtained surveillance footage from a nearby coffee shop, showing Clara purchasing a bottle of a powerful sedative on the morning of July 12, 2007. The same sedative was found in Laura's system during the autopsy. This evidence, combined with Clara's undeniable ambition and rumored jealousy, raised eyebrows among the authorities. Furthermore, witnesses came forward, claiming that Clara had been overheard making disparaging remarks about Laura's success. One witness, who wished to remain anonymous, reported hearing Clara say, "I should be the one in charge of Ocala after dark. Laura doesn't deserve all the attention she's getting." Will Clara Pointer's carefully crafted facade crumble under the weight of the evidence against her? Or is there a hidden accomplice who remains undiscovered? Only time will tell as this gripping true crime case unravels before our eyes. A major breakthrough in the investigation of Laura Wilkey's murder occurred on the afternoon of July 17, 2007. The time was precisely 4 p.m., and the blistering heat of Ocala, Florida, remained relentless. Detectives Olivia Gressel and Mark Hastur stumbled upon a crucial piece of evidence that would send shockwaves through the case. In their relentless pursuit of the truth, the detectives had been meticulously sifting through Laura's digital footprint. It was during this painstaking process that they unearthed a series of emails exchanged between Clara Pointer, a close friend and co-worker of Laura's, and David Yarboro, a private investigator renowned in the Ocala area. These emails provided a startling glimpse into the tangled web of deceit surrounding Laura's murder. Clara, it seemed, had been secretly seducing David to sabotage Laura's investigations. The content of the emails indicated that Laura had hired David to delve into the corrupt underbelly of Ocala's car dealership owner Jonathan, Range Rover Reed, with Clara acting as the intermediary. The detectives were astounded by this revelation. It raised a multitude of questions. What had Laura uncovered that was so dangerous? Who were the individuals involved in this web of corruption? And most importantly, why was Laura targeted? The implications of these emails were far-reaching. They suggested a motive for Clara's potential involvement in Laura's murder. Was she driven by jealousy and a desire to take over Ocala after dark, as rumors had suggested? Or was there something more sinister at play? As the investigation continued to unfold, the detectives were left with a myriad of unanswered questions. What other secrets lay hidden in the depths of Ocala's underbelly? And would they be able to bring Laura's killer to justice? The investigation took an unexpected turn on July 17, 2007, at around 4 p.m., when the Ocala police stumbled upon a series of emails exchanged between Clara Pointer, Laura Wilkey's co-worker and close friend, and David Yarboro, a private investigator hired by Laura to uncover corruption. These emails revealed a connection between Clara and David that raised eyebrows and left investigators scrambling to understand the implications. David Yarboro, a 45-year-old private investigator with a checkered past, had gained a reputation for his resourcefulness and determination in previous cases. He had been involved in Laura's high-profile corruption investigation, which had sent shockwaves through the local political scene. However, whispers began to circulate that David held a personal grudge against Laura for exposing his own misdeeds in the past. As the police interrogated David, his reaction was one of anger and frustration. He vehemently denied any involvement in Laura's murder, maintaining his innocence with unwavering conviction. The investigators delved into David's motives and connections to Clara, seeking to uncover any potential links that could shed light on the case. During the interrogation, David's past came under scrutiny. It was revealed that he had a history of working on high-stakes cases involving corruption and political scandals. Some of his previous clients included prominent figures in the local government, making him a well-known name in the realm of investigative journalism. However, as the investigation into Laura's murder unfolded, David's reputation began to crumble. The police dug deeper into David's personal life, interviewing his acquaintances and examining his financial records. They discovered that David had fallen on hard times in the months leading up to Laura's murder. He had been struggling to make ends meet, with mounting debts and a desperate need for a big break. This revelation raised suspicions about his involvement in Laura's death and added fuel to the growing fire of speculation surrounding the case. As the investigation continued, the police were determined to uncover the truth behind Laura Wilkey's untimely demise. With each new piece of evidence, The web of suspects grew more intricate and the motives became murkier. The clock was ticking, and the Ocala community held its breath, waiting for justice to prevail. In a shocking turn of events, the investigation into the untimely death of Laura Wilkey, the fearless journalist behind the renowned blog Ocala After Dark, took a sinister turn. After days of meticulous detective work, the police uncovered the true mastermind behind Laura's murder. Clara Pointer, a co-worker and friend who harbored a deep-seated jealousy and desire for power. Clara, a 28-year-old ambitious individual, had long coveted Laura's position as the head of Ocala After Dark. Rumors of her envy and resentment towards Laura's success had been circulating for months, but no one could have fathomed the extent of Clara's treachery. The police's breakthrough in the case came on July 17, 2007, when a series of emails between Clara and David Yarboro, a private investigator hired by Laura, were discovered. These emails shed light on Clara's nefarious plans to seduce and manipulate David, who had developed an unhealthy sexual obsession with Laura. David, a 45-year-old private investigator with a checkered past, had a personal vendetta against Laura for exposing his previous misdeeds. However, his twisted infatuation with her led him to inadvertently aid Clara in her sinister plot. The investigation revealed that Clara had been secretly poisoning Laura's coffee for months, gradually weakening her. Laura's haunting words, "Don't let my husband near me. He wants me dead," were uttered in her delirium as Clara's poison took its toll. It is a chilling reminder of the depths of Clara's manipulation and the tragic fate that awaited Laura. But Clara's web of deceit did not end there. She had exploited both Laura's husband, Jay Wilkey, and David, utilizing her sexuality and their vulnerabilities to further her sinister agenda. Clara knew that Jay's troubled marriage and volatile temper would make him an easy target for suspicion. She carefully orchestrated the murder to frame him, all while maintaining her facade of innocence. As the investigation unfolded, the police pieced together Clara's manipulative tactics, exposing the extent of her exploitation. With the evidence against her mounting, the police moved in to arrest Clara at her apartment. Her calculated use of sexuality and the vulnerabilities of those around her showcased a level of cunning that is truly chilling. The trial that followed the shocking murder of Laura Wilkey was nothing short of a gripping spectacle. The courtroom was packed with eager spectators, eager to witness justice being served. District Attorney Unity Collins led the prosecution, presenting a compelling argument that left no room for doubt. She meticulously laid out the evidence, highlighting Clara Pointer's jealousy and calculated actions. The defense attorney, Esmeralda Constable, fought tooth and nail to cast doubt on the evidence and Clara's motives. She argued that the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence and lacked a smoking gun. However, the weight of the evidence against Clara was overwhelming, leaving the defense with an uphill battle. Emotions ran high as Laura's family took their seats in the courtroom. They had endured months of heartache and uncertainty, desperately seeking justice for their beloved daughter. The trial became a battleground of conflicting narratives, with the prosecution painting Clara as a manipulative mastermind and the defense attempting to humanize her, portraying her as a victim of circumstances. Throughout the trial, the jury listened intently to the testimonies of witnesses, examined the physical evidence, and reviewed the damning emails exchanged between Clara and the private investigator, David Yarboro. The emails revealed Clara's sinister plans and her attempts to manipulate both Jay Wilkey and David. After hours of deliberation, the jury delivered their unanimous verdict, guilty. Clara Pointer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and anguish as Laura's family and friends finally saw justice being served. The impact of the trial rippled through the community, leaving a lasting impression on the residents of Ocala, Florida. The trial became the topic of conversations at local diners and coffee shops, with everyone weighing in on the verdict and its implications. As the trial came to a close, Laura's family and friends were left grappling with the aftermath. The wounds caused by her untimely demise would never fully heal, but the verdict brought them a sense of closure. They could finally begin the process of healing and moving forward, cherishing the memories of Laura and the impact she had on their lives. In the aftermath of the trial, life took on a new normal for all those involved. Jay Wilkey, Laura's husband, who had been falsely accused, felt a mix of relief and grief. He sought solace in rebuilding his life, focusing on his gardening supply store and reconnecting with friends and family. Jay found comfort in the support of the Ocala community, who rallied behind him during the trial. He became an advocate for justice reform, using his own experience to raise awareness about wrongful accusations. David Yarboro, the private investigator who had unwittingly aided Clara Pointer in her plot, was consumed by guilt. He dedicated himself to making amends for his misplaced loyalty. David reached out to Laura's family, offering his sincere apologies and assistance in any way he could. He embarked on a personal journey of redemption, vowing to use his investigative skills for good and help other victims of manipulation and deceit. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, but the memory of Laura Wilkey remained etched in the hearts of those who knew her. The trial had exposed the dark underbelly of jealousy and manipulation, but it also showcased the resilience of a community seeking justice. The impact of Laura's life and untimely death would forever serve as a reminder to cherish the truth and stand against those who seek to deceive.
Bethany Montauk, age 36, was a dedicated and passionate high school English teacher residing in Wilmington, Delaware. Known for her kindness and creativity in the classroom, Bethany was admired by both her students and colleagues. Her unwavering commitment to helping others made her a beloved figure in the community. Despite facing personal challenges in her marriage, Bethany maintained a positive outlook and strived to make a difference in the lives of those around her. She dedicated her days to shaping young minds, always going the extra mile to ensure her students received the best education possible. Outside of the classroom, Bethany's love for wine led her to explore the local vineyards in Delaware. She would spend her weekends visiting wineries, immersing herself in the rich history and culture of the region's wine production. She became well-versed in the different grape varieties, fermentation processes, and the art of pairing wine with food. She had an impressive knowledge of various wine brands and was something of a wine connoisseur. Unfortunately, as many teachers in America know, her passion for teaching was not enough to pay the bills, and so she worked as a sommelier at a local upscale restaurant in downtown Wilmington to make ends meet, showcasing her passion for wine and providing recommendations to patrons. April of 2002 was a time of excitement and anticipation for Bethany. She had been selected to attend a prestigious education conference in New York City, where she would have the opportunity to connect with other educators and learn from experts in her field. This conference was highly regarded in the education community, and Bethany saw it as a chance to enhance her teaching skills and bring fresh ideas back to her students. Little did Bethany know that she would never go to this conference, would never go anywhere again. A tragic turn of events that would forever change the lives of those who knew and loved her. The investigation into her death would uncover a web of secrets and hidden motives, revealing a side of Bethany's life that no one could have imagined. On a fateful day in April 2002, the lifeless body of Bethany Montauk, a beloved high school English teacher, was discovered in her residence located in Wilmington, Delaware. The date, forever etched in the minds of those involved in the investigation, was April 10th. The weather on that day was mild, with a gentle breeze sweeping through the streets of Wilmington as the city buzzed with the anticipation of the upcoming Easter holiday. It was early morning when tragedy struck the Montauk household. Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk, stumbled upon a scene that would forever haunt him. Shock and disbelief washed over him as he entered their home and discovered the lifeless body of his beloved wife. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of birds chirping outside. The authorities were immediately alerted, and a team of seasoned detectives from the Wilmington Police Department swiftly arrived at the Montauk residence. The entire house was cordoned off, and the investigation quickly gained media attention, with local news outlets such as the Wilmington Gazette and Channel 8 News reporting on the shocking crime. Neighbors, friends, and colleagues of Bethany Montauk were left in a state of disbelief and grief. The tight-knit community rallied together, holding candlelight vigils and organizing fundraisers to support Bethany's grieving family. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the city of Wilmington, leaving its residents on edge and desperate for answers. As the investigation unfolded, the police remained tight-lipped about the details surrounding Bethany's murder. Rumors began to circulate, with some speculating that the crime was a result of a botched robbery, while others believed it to be a targeted attack. The uncertainty and fear that gripped the community were palpable, as everyone wondered who could commit such a heinous act against a beloved teacher. The police wasted no time in responding to the distressing discovery of Bethany Montauk's lifeless body. On that fateful April day in 2002, the investigators arrived at the Montauk residence with a sense of urgency, ready to unravel the truth behind this heinous crime. Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, the famous husband and wife team of the Wilmington Police, known for their meticulous approach to investigations, took charge of the case. They were determined to bring justice to Bethany and her grieving loved ones. As they entered the crime scene, the sense of foreboding hung in the air. The Montauk residence, once a place of warmth and laughter, now stood as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The investigators carefully observed their surroundings,
noting every detail that could potentially lead them closer to the truth. Traces of blood stained the walls and floor, a chilling testament to the violence that had taken place. Signs of a struggle were evident, with overturned furniture and shattered glass scattered throughout the room. It was clear that Bethany had fought for her life, leaving behind a harrowing scene for the investigators to piece together. One crucial piece of evidence stood out amongst the chaos: a glass of Chardonnay wine. The investigators suspected that this innocent-looking beverage had been used as the murder weapon. The toxic substance that tainted the wine was identified as deadly cyanide, a potent poison that could swiftly end a life. The investigators meticulously collected every possible clue, ensuring that no detail went unnoticed. They dusted for fingerprints, carefully bagged and labeled potential evidence, and photographed the crime scene from every angle. The room was meticulously combed for any trace of the perpetrator, any hint that would lead them closer to solving this chilling mystery. As the investigation progressed, the detectives reached out to experts in forensic science. They employed advanced techniques, analyzing the wine glass for DNA, fingerprints, and any other trace evidence that could link the killer to the crime. The clock was ticking, and the pressure to solve the case grew with each passing day. The investigation into the murder of Bethany Montauk captivated the attention of the local community and garnered media coverage. News outlets such as the Wilmington Gazette and the Delaware Times reported on the progress of the investigation, keeping the public informed and engaged in the search for justice. With each passing day, the detectives inched closer to uncovering the truth behind Bethany's tragic demise. They knew that time was of the essence, and they were determined to bring the perpetrator to justice. In the investigation of the shocking murder of beloved high school English teacher Bethany Montauk, the police turned their attention to her husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. Mark, a 38-year-old, presented himself as a successful investment banker, but beneath his bland and pleasant facade lurked a web of secrets. Detectives Sarah Anders and James Anders, a husband and wife team known for their meticulous approach to solving crimes, suspected that Mark had a motive to eliminate Bethany. It was discovered that Mark had a life insurance policy worth a staggering $300,000 on his wife, raising eyebrows and leading investigators to delve deeper into his financial motivations. During the intense interrogation, Mark's emotions fluctuated between anger and calmness as he vehemently denied any involvement in his wife's murder. The detectives skillfully probed his alibi, scrutinizing the events leading up to the fateful day of Bethany's death. To establish a timeline, the detectives meticulously gathered evidence from various sources. They interviewed neighbors who reported hearing heated arguments between Mark and Bethany in the weeks leading up to the murder. The couple's financial records were examined, revealing a pattern of excessive spending and mounting debt. It was discovered that Bethany's teaching job, though highly regarded, did not provide sufficient income, leading her to work as a sommelier to make ends meet. As the investigation progressed, the detectives uncovered a disturbing connection between Mark and a local wine distributor. Records showed that Mark had been purchasing a particular brand of Chardonnay, the same brand found at the crime scene. This discovery raised suspicions that Mark may have tampered with the wine, lacing it with deadly cyanide. To bolster their case, the investigators sought the assistance of forensic experts. The toxicology report confirmed the presence of cyanide in Bethany's system, further strengthening the suspicion against Mark. The detectives also analyzed Mark's financial records, uncovering a series of questionable transactions that pointed to a desperate need for money. With the weight of evidence mounting against Mark, the investigators were determined to bring justice to Bethany and her grieving community. But as they delved deeper into the twisted web of secrets surrounding the Montauk marriage, they would soon discover that there was more to this case than met the eye. Laura Bascule-Groves, a 26-year-old sex education teacher at the same high school where Bethany Montauk worked, has emerged as the second suspect in the investigation. Laura, known for her outgoing personality and rapier wit, was a familiar face among the students and staff. However, beneath her friendly demeanor, a deep-seated hatred towards Bethany simmered, fueled by a secret affair with Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. The police wasted no time in bringing Laura in for questioning. The interrogation room was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. Detective Sarah Anders, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for her relentless pursuit of the truth, sat across from Laura. Detective Anders skillfully probed Laura's involvement in the murder, carefully dissecting her every response. Laura's initial reaction to the accusations was one of anger. She vehemently denied any knowledge of Bethany's murder, her voice filled with outrage. "I would never do something so heinous," she exclaimed, her eyes flashing with defiance. However, as the interrogation progressed, cracks began to appear in Laura's facade. With her back against the wall, Laura's denials grew weaker. She attempted to distance herself from the murder, claiming that her affair with Mark had ended months before Bethany's tragic demise. However, the detectives were not easily swayed by her words. They had uncovered a trove of sexually explicit text messages exchanged between Laura and Mark during the time leading up to the murder, revealing their continued sexual involvement. As the interrogation drew to a close, Laura's demeanor shifted from anger to desperation. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her situation. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she whispered, her voice filled with remorse. The detectives remained stoic, their focus unwavering. The investigation into Laura Bascule-Groves' involvement in Bethany Montauk's murder continued. The truth, like a jigsaw puzzle, slowly began to take shape. The question remained: would Laura's secrets be enough to unravel the mystery surrounding Bethany's tragic demise? In the perplexing case of Bethany Montauk's murder, the investigation took an unexpected turn when a seemingly unassuming neighbor, Daniel Logan, emerged as the third suspect. At the age of 72, Daniel was a widower known for his reserved nature and meticulous attention to detail. Living in the same suburban neighborhood as the Montauks, he had been quietly observing their lives, unbeknownst to them. The police, led by the determined husband and wife team of Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, brought Daniel in for questioning. The interrogation room was dimly lit, creating an atmosphere of suspense and intrigue. Daniel sat calmly, his demeanor betraying no signs of guilt or nervousness. As the detectives delved deeper into their line of questioning, Daniel revealed a shocking motive rooted in blackmail. It appeared that he had stumbled upon a dark secret of Mark Anthony Montauk, Bethany's husband. Mark, a seemingly successful investment banker, had been leading a double life, engaging in extramarital affairs behind Bethany's back. Daniel claimed that Mark had approached him, offering him sex in exchange for his silence. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation as it hinted at a complex web of deceit and betrayal. The detectives meticulously probed Daniel for further details, seeking to uncover the truth behind this sordid affair. Despite the gravity of the situation, Daniel remained composed throughout the interrogation. His calmness added an air of mystery to his involvement in the case. The detectives, determined to uncover every piece of evidence, carefully cross-referenced Daniel's statements with other testimonies and physical evidence collected from the crime scene. As the investigation unfolded, the detectives discovered that Daniel had been keeping a detailed journal, meticulously documenting every interaction he had witnessed between Mark and Laura Bascule-Groves, the second suspect. This journal became a crucial piece of evidence, shedding light on the intricate dynamics between the three individuals. With each page turned, the detectives pieced together a timeline of events, connecting Mark's illicit affair with Laura to the murder of Bethany. The journal entries revealed clandestine meetings, secret phone calls, and coded messages exchanged between the two suspects. The investigation into Daniel's involvement in the case continued.
as the detectives sought to determine the extent of his knowledge and potential role in the murder. The evidence gathered thus far pointed to a web of secrets, lies, and manipulation, leaving the detectives eager to uncover the full truth. In a shocking turn of events, the truth behind the heinous murder of beloved high school English teacher Bethany Montauk had finally been revealed. After months of tireless investigation, the police identified and arrested the murderer, bringing an end to a dark chapter in the history of Wilmington, Delaware. The mastermind behind this sinister plot was none other than Bethany's husband, Mark Anthony Montauk. The 38-year-old, who presented himself as a successful investment banker, was never an actual investment banker. He had never held a job, never even went to college. In fact, he was a high school dropout and functionally illiterate. His web of lies and deceit began to unravel when the police discovered his dark secret. Driven by a toxic combination of greed, fear, and deception, Mark orchestrated a twisted and frantic plan to keep Bethany from learning the truth about his fraudulent life. In a desperate bid to silence her forever, he poisoned her with a glass of Chardonnay wine laced with deadly cyanide. This chilling act of betrayal sent shockwaves through the community, leaving friends, family, and colleagues in disbelief. But Mark was not acting alone. Another key player in this tragic tale was Laura Bascule-Groves, a 26-year-old sex education teacher at the same high school where Bethany worked. Laura, driven by a deep-seated hatred and a secret affair with Mark, manipulated him into carrying out the murder. In her quest to eliminate her romantic rival and claim Mark for herself, she used his dark secrets as leverage. The police, led by the dedicated husband and wife team of Detective Sarah Anders and Detective James Anders, painstakingly pieced together the puzzle that led to the arrest of both Mark and Laura. With unwavering determination, they meticulously collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed forensic data. The arrest of Mark Montauk left the community stunned. The facade of a successful investment banker crumbled, revealing a man consumed by fear and deceit. The arrest of Laura Bascule-Groves added another layer of shock, as her friendly demeanor masked a sinister and calculating mind. As news of the arrest spread, the community of Wilmington breathed a collective sigh of relief. The dark cloud of uncertainty that had hung over them for months was finally dissipating. The memory of Bethany Montauk, a dedicated and beloved teacher, will forever be etched in their hearts. The trial that followed the arrest of Mark Montauk gripped the community of Wilmington, Delaware in April of 2004. District Attorney Emil Borko, a seasoned prosecutor known for his tenacity, presented a compelling case against the accused. The courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a vivid picture of the heinous crime that had taken place. The defense attorney, Mark J. Castlebreath, fought vigorously to cast doubt on the evidence presented by the prosecution. Castlebreath, known for his sharp legal mind, argued that there were inconsistencies in the timeline of events and questioned the credibility of some of the witnesses. He attempted to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors, urging them to consider alternative theories. The trial lasted for several days, with both the prosecution and defense presenting their arguments and calling witnesses to the stand. The jury, composed of 12 individuals from various walks of life, carefully listened to the testimonies and examined the evidence. They deliberated for hours, weighing the facts and the arguments presented before reaching their verdict. Finally, the moment arrived. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Mark Anthony Montauk, guilty of the murder of Bethany Montauk, the foreperson announced, her voice steady and resolute. Gasps of disbelief echoed through the courtroom as the reality of the verdict sank in. The sentencing phase of the trial commenced shortly after the guilty verdict was announced. The prosecution argued for a harsh punishment, citing the brutal nature of the crime and the devastating impact it had on the victim's family and the community. The defense, on the other hand, pleaded for leniency, highlighting Mark's lack of a criminal record and his potential for rehabilitation. After careful consideration, the judge handed down the sentence. Mark Montauk would serve a term of 5 years in prison. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions, with some expressing relief and others feeling that the sentence was too lenient given the gravity of the crime.
As the trial came to a close, the impact of the verdict rippled through the lives of Bethany's friends and family, forever altering their perception of the justice system. They found solace in the fact that the person responsible for Bethany's untimely death would be held accountable, but the pain of their loss would never fully heal. After the trial concluded, the lives of everyone involved in the Bethany Montauk murder case took divergent paths. The suspects, police investigators, and family members were left to grapple with the aftermath of the heinous crime that shook the tight-knit community of Wilmington, Delaware in April of 2002. Mark Anthony Montauk, the convicted murderer, was sentenced to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole. His once charming facade crumbled as the truth about his deceitful nature came to light during the trial. With his dark secret exposed, he became a pariah, shunned by the community that had once held him in high regard. The Montauk residence, once a symbol of a seemingly idyllic life, now stood as a haunting reminder of the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Laura Bascule-Groves, the co-conspirator in the murder plot, faced a different fate. Her involvement in the crime tarnished her reputation as a respected educator. The revelation of her manipulative actions left her isolated and ostracized from the community she had once been a part of. Seeking redemption, after her prison sentence of 10 months, she relocated to Orlando, Florida, hoping to start anew and leave behind the dark past that haunted her. As the years passed, the scars left by the Bethany Montauk murder case began to heal, albeit slowly. The community gradually moved forward, determined to not let the darkness overshadow the resilience and spirit that defined Wilmington. The case served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing those we hold dear. The case of Bethany Montauk's murder serves as a chilling reminder of the depths to which human nature can sink. It highlights the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how hidden or complex it may be. Myra Everson was a 25-year-old woman full of life and love. She lived in Bentonville, Arkansas, a small town known for being the home of Walmart, America's #1 retailer. Myra was very creative and loved helping people. She worked at a homeless shelter called Helping Hands and was very passionate about her job. Myra often organized events to raise money and collect donations for the shelter. She was well known in the community for her kindness and dedication. Myra was also very involved in the local art community. She loved painting and often participated in art shows and exhibitions. Her favorite place to visit was the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. She would spend hours there, admiring the works of famous artists and getting inspiration for her own creations. Myra grew up in Bentonville and went to Bentonville High School, where she was an excellent student. She was especially good at English and art. Her parents were Reverend Isil Everson and Clara Everson. Clara passed away when Myra was only 10 years old, leaving her to be raised by her strict and controlling father. Despite her father's harsh ways, Myra remained optimistic and cheerful. She had a younger sister, Lyra, who she was very close to. Lyra often described Myra as her best friend and biggest supporter. Myra had a close-knit group of friends, including Lily Harrington, who also worked at the homeless shelter. Myra had big dreams for the future. She wanted to open her own art studio where people could come and create art together. She often talked about her plans with excitement, sharing her vision of a space filled with colorful paintings and happy people. In the days before her death, Myra was busy preparing for an art exhibition that was scheduled for the end of October 1992. She was very excited about it and spent a lot of time working on her paintings. Myra's vibrant personality and warm heart made her a beloved member of the Bentonville community. She had a way of making everyone around her feel special and loved. Her sudden and tragic death left a huge void in the lives of those who knew and loved her. On the morning of October 14, 1992, Bentonville, Arkansas, was experiencing a chilly and overcast day. At around 8 o'clock a.m., Myra's friend and co-worker, Lily Harrington, went to Myra's house. They had planned to carpool to work at the Helping Hands homeless shelter, just like they did every day. When Lily arrived, she noticed that the front door was slightly open. Thinking Myra might have stepped out for a moment, she called out her name but received no response. Lily hesitated for a moment, feeling a growing sense of unease. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The living room was eerily quiet, and there was a chill in the air. As she walked further into the house, she saw Myra lying on the living room floor. Lily froze in horror, unable to believe what she was seeing. Myra's face was pale, and her left hand was terribly mangled, with 3 fingers missing. Lilus' heart raced as she rushed to check for signs of life, but it was clear that Myra was gone. Overwhelmed by shock and fear, Lilus stumbled back and grabbed the kitchen phone to dial 911. Her voice was shaky and full of panic as she described the scene to the dispatcher. She could hardly believe that her friend was dead. The news of Myra's death spread quickly through Bentonville. By the time the police arrived, a small crowd had begun to gather outside her house. The brutal nature of Myra's murder left them with many questions. Why would someone do this to such a beloved member of the community? As the investigation began, the people of Bentonville were left in shock and fear, wondering who could have committed such a terrible crime. The police arrived quickly at Mayor Everson's house on the morning of October 14, 1992. The weather was chilly and overcast, matching the grim mood. Detective Samuel E. Myra, a seasoned investigator known for his thoroughness, led the team. Detective Karen Genora, his sharp and observant partner, was by his side. When the detectives entered the living room, they were met with a disturbing scene. The room was in disarray, with furniture knocked over and items scattered. A blood-stained belt lay on the floor, clearly the murder weapon used to strangle Myra. The sight was shocking even to the experienced detectives. Myra's body showed signs of a violent struggle, and her left hand was horribly mutilated, with 3 fingers ripped off. Detective Myra and Genora carefully examined the crime scene. They documented everything, taking numerous photographs and making detailed notes. They collected the belt and other potential evidence, such as fingerprints and fibers. The detectives also noticed a broken lamp and several books scattered around, suggesting Myra fought hard against her attacker. Forensics teams arrived shortly after to assist with the investigation. They used various tools and methods to gather evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, collected hair and fiber samples, and searched for any other clues that might help identify the murderer. The brutality of the crime indicated a deep personal motive, and the detectives knew they had to work quickly to solve the case. Neighbors and bystanders watched in silence as the police worked. Bentonville was a close-knit community, and the news of Myra's murder had already begun to spread. People were shocked and scared, unable to comprehend why someone would kill such a beloved young woman. Detective Myra interviewed Lily Harrington, who had found Myra's body. Lily was still in shock, but managed to provide a detailed account of her discovery. She described how she found the front door ajar and the horrible sight of Myra's lifeless body on the living room floor. Her testimony gave the detectives a clearer picture of the timeline. The investigation team also spoke to neighbors, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual that morning. Some reported hearing raised voices late at night, while others mentioned seeing a strange car parked nearby. The detectives took note of every detail, knowing that even the smallest clue could be crucial. As the day went on, the police continued their investigation, determined to find justice for Myra. The crime scene was methodically combed for evidence, and the detectives began to piece together the tragic events leading to her death. The investigation into Myra Everson's murder quickly turned to her father, Reverend Isil Everson. Isil was a well-known figure in Bentonville, Arkansas, respected for his role as a preacher. At 56 years old, he was charming and sociable, often seen as a pillar of the community. However, beneath his outward charm, Isil had a dark and controlling side that few knew about. Detective Samuel E. Myra and Detective Karen Genora brought Isil in for questioning on October 15, 1992. They met him at the police station, a stark contrast to the comforting atmosphere of his church. Isil maintained a calm demeanor, but there was a noticeable tension in his eyes. During the interrogation, the detectives asked Isil about his relationship with Myra. He spoke fondly of her, but avoided details about their conflicts. However, the detectives knew from Myra's friends that she often clashed with her father. Isil disapproved of Myra's independence and her love for books, which he saw as a rebellion against his strict beliefs, a common situation in a region where only 31% of women can read. Isil's alibi was weak. He claimed to have been at home alone on the night of Myra's murder, reading the Book of Revelations and preparing his sermon. When asked if anyone could verify his whereabouts, Isil became defensive, insisting his word should be enough. The detectives pressed further, asking about any recent arguments with Myra. Isil admitted to a heated disagreement a few days before her death, but downplayed its significance. He said it was a typical father-daughter dispute. However, the detectives knew that Myra had confided in friends about her father's controlling nature and his anger over her reading habits. Despite his outward calm, Azazel showed signs of nervousness. He fidgeted with his hands and avoided direct eye contact. But detectives noted these behaviors, sensing there was more beneath the surface. Azazel's motive seemed clear. He wanted to control Myra's life and eliminate anything he saw as a threat to his authority. To gather more evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for Azazel's house. Inside, they found a hidden room in the basement. The room contained disturbing items, including restraints and various books on punishment and control. This discovery painted a darker picture of Azazel's true nature and his obsession with dominance. As the investigation continued, Azazel remained a prime suspect. His secretive and controlling behavior, combined with his weak alibi and the hidden room, made him a focal point for the detectives. They knew they had to keep digging to uncover the full truth behind Myra's tragic death. As the investigation into Myra Everson's murder continued, the detectives turned their attention to Janice Lilus. Janice was a 59-year-old oil driller from Oklahoma known for her determination and resourcefulness. She had a reputation for uncovering difficult truths and was known for her tenacity in the male-dominated field of oil drilling. On October 17, 1992, Detectives Samuel E. Myra and Karen Genora traveled to Oklahoma to interview Janice. They met her at her modest home, which was filled with mementos from her work and travels. Janice greeted them with a firm handshake, her eyes sharp and inquisitive. During the interview, Janice spoke openly about her relationship with Myra. She admitted that they had become close friends and had even formed a sexual relationship. Janice revealed that Myra had hired her to kill Reverend Azazel Everson after he beat her for reading a novel by the novelist Joyce Lehman. Janice explained that she had grown protective of Myra and wanted to help her escape her father's control. When asked about her whereabouts on the night of Myra's murder, Janice provided a solid alibi. She was working on an oil rig out in West Texas and had several coworkers who could confirm her presence. Despite her strong alibi, the detectives were intrigued by her connection to Myra and her deep-seated hatred for Azazel. Janice described Azazel as a cruel and manipulative man who used his position as a preacher to control and abuse his daughter. She spoke passionately about how she wanted to free Myra from his grasp. Although she admitted to planning to kill Azazel, she insisted she had nothing to do with Myra's murder. Throughout the interview, Janice remained calm and composed. She answered the detectives' questions directly and showed no signs of nervousness. Her demeanor and clear alibi made it difficult for the detectives to connect her directly to the murder. However, her close relationship with Myra and her intense dislike for Azazel kept her on their radar. As the investigation into Janice continued, the detectives knew they had to explore every angle. Her strong alibi and open demeanor contrasted sharply with the disturbing nature of the crime, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. They remained determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to Myra Everson. On October 20, 1992, Bentonville was experiencing a crisp, clear morning. At around 9:00 a.m., a local jogger was running along a wooded trail near Myra Everson's home. As he made his way through the path, he noticed something unusual in the bushes. Curious, he stopped to take a closer look and discovered a small, blood-stained bag partially buried under some leaves. He quickly called the police, and Detective Samuel E. Myra and Detective Karen Genora arrived at the scene shortly after. They carefully retrieved the bag and examined its contents. Inside, they found 3 severed fingers wrapped in a piece of cloth. The detectives immediately realized these were likely Myra's missing fingers. The discovery of the bag and fingers was a significant breakthrough in the case. The detectives meticulously documented the evidence and sent the bag to the forensics lab for further analysis. The lab confirmed that the fingers belonged to Myra, and the cloth was identified as part of a shirt belonging to Reverend Azazel Everson. The detectives interviewed Brian Daniels to gather more information about the discovery. Ryan described how he stumbled upon the bag while jogging and noted that he hadn't seen anyone suspicious in the area. His account was clear and straightforward, providing the detectives with a better understanding of how the evidence had been hidden. With this new evidence, the detectives turned their attention back to Reverend Azazel Everson. They believed the discovery of the fingers and the cloth linked him more closely to the crime. They obtained a search warrant for his home and conducted a thorough search. Inside Azazel's bedroom, they found a blood-stained shirt that matched the cloth found in the bag. This discovery further implicated Azazel in Myra's murder. The police also re-interviewed Harrington,
Myra's friend who had found her body. Lilus recalled that Myra had been worried about her father's increasingly erratic behavior in the days leading up to her death. Myra had confided in Lilus about her fear that her father might harm her. This testimony, combined with the new evidence, strengthened the case against Isil. Detectives Myra and Janora knew they were getting closer to solving the case. The discovery of the bag and the forensic evidence provided crucial links that pointed towards Isil as the prime suspect. The detectives continued to gather evidence, determined to bring justice to Myra Everson and uncover the full truth behind her tragic death. As the investigation into Myra Everson's murder progressed, detectives Samuel Myra and Karen Janora discovered another tragic connection. On October 22, 1992, they received a report about the murder of Faria Haddon, a 28-year-old woman living in the nearby town of Fayetteville. Faria, like Myra, had been strangled with a belt, and 3 fingers were ripped off her left hand. Faria was known for her ambition and dedication to her work as an escort. She was discreet about her job, but had been in a secret relationship with Reverend Isil Everson for over a year. Detectives Myra and Janora quickly realized the connection between the 2 murders and decided to investigate further. They traveled to Faria's apartment, a small but tidy place decorated with simple but elegant furnishings. Inside, the crime scene was eerily similar to Myra's. The living room showed signs of a struggle, with furniture overturned and a blood-stained belt lying on the floor. Faria's body was found in the same manner as Myra's, with her fingers missing. Detectives interviewed Faria's neighbors and acquaintances. They learned that Faria admired Isil's charisma and saw him as her escape from a life of poverty. She had confided in a close friend about her relationship with Isil. The friend described Faria as a hopeful and driven person who wanted a better life for herself. The detectives also found a diary in Faria's apartment where she had written about her relationship with Isil. The diary entries revealed that Faria had discovered something disturbing about Isil's secret life. She had found evidence linking him to illegal drug running and was planning to confront him. This discovery provided a possible motive for her murder. During the investigation, the detectives interrogated Isil again. He was visibly more nervous this time, but he maintained his innocence. He admitted to knowing Faria, but denied any involvement in her death. His alibi for the night of Faria's murder was weak, just like his alibi for Myra's murder. Despite Isil's denials, the detectives continued to dig deeper. They cross-referenced evidence from both crime scenes and found striking similarities. The belts used in both murders were of the same brand and size, and the method of strangulation was identical. The detectives also found fibers from Isil's clothes on both victims, further implicating him in the crimes. The investigation into Faria's murder added a new layer of complexity to the case. The detectives were now dealing with a serial killer who had targeted 2 women connected to Isil. They knew they had to act quickly to prevent any further tragedies and bring the murderer to justice. On October 25, 1992, Bentonville, Arkansas, woke up to a cool, rainy morning. Detective Samuel Myra and Detective Karen Janora had just received a breakthrough in their investigation. Forensic analysis of the evidence from both Myra Everson and Faria Haddon's murders pointed to a new suspect, Mark David Lilus, the husband of Janice Lilus. Mark David, a 61-year-old traveling revivalist preacher, was known for his charismatic sermons. However, his public persona hid a dark secret. He was leading a double life as a serial killer. He had carefully constructed an alibi by frequently traveling, which made it difficult to connect him to the crimes initially. Detective Myra and Detective Janora pieced together that Mark David had murdered Myra to prevent her from exposing his double life. Myra had discovered incriminating evidence against Mark David through his wife, Janice, with whom she had a sexual relationship. Faria had also found evidence of Mark David's involvement in Myra's affair and planned to confront him. To silence her, he killed her in the same brutal manner. The detectives coordinated with local police in Tulsa to track down Mark David. On the evening of October 25, they located him at a revival meeting he was hosting. The weather was stormy, with heavy rain pounding on the roof of the small church where he happened to be preaching. The police moved in quietly, not wanting to alarm the attendees. Mark David was taken into custody without resistance. He seemed surprised by the arrest but remained calm. At the police station, he was interrogated by detectives Myra and Janora. Initially, he denied any involvement, but the overwhelming evidence against him quickly broke down his facade. He confessed to the murders, explaining that he killed Myra and Feria to protect his secret life as a serial killer. He believed that if his double life were exposed, it would ruin his reputation and his wife's trust. His calm demeanor during the confession was chilling, revealing the cold and calculating nature of his crimes. The arrest of Mark David Lilus brought a mix of relief and sorrow to Bentonville. Myra's family, devastated by the loss, expressed a sense of closure knowing the murderer was caught. Feria's friends and family also found some peace in the justice served. The detectives felt the sense of accomplishment, but were also saddened by the brutal nature of the crimes. They had worked tirelessly to bring justice to Myra and Feria, and now their efforts had paid off. Bentonville could begin to heal, knowing that the person responsible for these heinous acts was behind bars. In June of 1994, the trial of Mark David Lilus, the murderer of Myra Everson and Feria Haddon, began in Bentonville, Arkansas. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Sarah Jane Kersey, a seasoned lawyer known for her dedication to justice. The defense attorney was Robert Luley, a skilled lawyer with a reputation for defending high-profile cases. The courtroom was packed with spectators, eager to see justice served for the victims. Myra's family, including her sister Lyra Everson, sat in the front row, their faces filled with a mix of grief and determination. Feria's friends and supporters were also present, showing solidarity with her memory. During the trial, the prosecution presented a compelling case against Mark David Lilus. They called witnesses, including Detective Samuel E. Myra and forensic experts, to testify about the evidence linking Mark David to the murders. They also played recordings of Mark David's confession, highlighting his chilling admission of guilt. District Attorney Kersey argued that Mark David's motive for the murders was to protect his double life as a serial killer. She painted him as a cold and calculating individual who was willing to kill to preserve his reputation and keep his secrets hidden. Her impassioned closing argument resonated with the jury and the spectators alike. Defense attorney Robert Luley attempted to create doubt in the minds of the jurors. He questioned the reliability of the evidence and argued that Mark David's confession may have been coerced. He also portrayed Mark David as a devoted man of faith and pillar of the community, trying to humanize him in the eyes of the jury. After several weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Mark David Lilus was found guilty on all counts of murder. The courtroom erupted in applause as the verdict was read aloud. Myra's family embraced each other, tears of relief stringing down their faces. Feria's friends hugged each other tightly, finding solace in the knowledge that justice had been served for their friend. Mark David was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence brought closure to the families of Myra and Feria, knowing that Mark David would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The trial and sentencing of Mark David Lilus marked the end of a long and painful chapter for Bentonville. The community could finally begin to heal, knowing that the person responsible for the murders had been held accountable for his actions. After the trial and sentencing of Mark David Lilus, life in Bentonville began to return to a semblance of normalcy. Myra Everson and Feria Haddon were remembered fondly by their loved ones, who found solace in their memories. For Myra's family, the verdict brought a sense of closure, but the pain of her loss lingered. Her sister, Lydia Everson, continued to honor her memory by volunteering at the homeless shelter where Myra had worked. Lydia found comfort in helping others, knowing it was what Myra would have wanted. Feria's friends organized a memorial event in her honor, inviting members of the community to share their memories of her. They created a scholarship fund in her name to support young women pursuing higher education, a cause that Feria had been passionate about. Detectives Samuel E. Myra and Karen Genora were hailed as heroes for their tireless efforts in solving the case. They received awards for their dedication to justice and continued to serve the community with distinction. As for Janelise Lilus, she struggled to come to terms with the truth about her husband's crimes. She distanced herself from the media attention surrounding the trial and focused on rebuilding her life. Despite the betrayal she felt, she found solace in the support of friends and family. The people of Bentonville rallied together in the aftermath of the trial, united in their determination to move forward. They held fundraisers and community events to support the families of the victims and to raise awareness about domestic violence and the importance of seeking help. Bentonville, once haunted by tragedy, emerged stronger than ever, a testament to the power of unity and justice. Today, we're exploring a chilling tale from America's largest retirement community, where a young woman's life would be cut tragically short by her sugar daddy's twisted obsession.
Emily Harrington was a 22-year-old elementary school teacher in Sumter County, Florida, where she taught at a small school. Emily was a kind and caring person, always going the extra mile for her students. Her classroom was filled with bright posters and educational toys, and she often stayed late, grading papers and preparing lessons. She was passionate about helping kids learn and wanted to make a difference in their lives. Despite her dedication, Emily struggled with the extraordinarily low salary of just $19,000 a year. It was tough to live on that income, especially with the rising cost of living. Rent, groceries, and even gas prices were high, and Emily found it hard to make ends meet. She dreamed of doing more for her students and herself, but the financial stress was overwhelming. To supplement her income, Emily turned to a sugar daddy arrangement. She sought out older, wealthy men who would provide her with financial support in exchange for companionship. This led her to the Villages, America's largest retirement community and a haven of sexual free expression, where she met Hal Davenport, a 68-year-old retired businessman. Hal was generous, often buying Emily expensive gifts and taking her out to nice restaurants. Emily saw this as a way to support herself while still pursuing her passion for teaching. Emily had a close relationship with her father, Robert Harrington, especially after her mother passed away. Robert was proud of his daughter and her accomplishments, but he worried about her living situation and the pressure she faced. He knew she was struggling but didn't know the full extent of it. Emily didn't share her sugar daddy arrangement with him, keeping it a secret to avoid upsetting him. In March 2022, Emily was focused on her work and future. She was preparing for the next school year and planning to attend a conference in Orlando to learn more about engaging her students in science. Emily dreamed of becoming a well-known educator, inspiring other teachers and students. But behind her positive outlook, she was dealing with the complexities of her sugar daddy arrangement, a secret that would soon have tragic consequences. On the morning of March 12, 2022, just before 7:30 a.m., Jasper Rivera, a maintenance worker at the U-Haul storage facility on County Road 466, just outside the Villages, Florida, started his routine checks. The sun had just risen, casting a pale light over the rows of orange and white storage units. As Jasper made his way down the aisles, he noticed something unusual near one of the storage units, a pile of what looked like discarded clothing. Curious, Jasper walked closer, but what he saw made him freeze in his tracks. It wasn't just a pile of clothes. It was a young woman's body, partially dressed and lying on the cold, rough ground. Her face was turned away, and she wasn't moving. Jasper's heart raced as he realized the seriousness of what he had found. He quickly pulled out his smartphone, his hands shaking, and dialed 911. When the operator answered, Jasper struggled to find the words to describe what he had just seen. "I found a body," he finally managed to say, his voice unsteady. The operator calmly asked him to stay on the line and provide details about the location while dispatching emergency services to the scene. Jasper followed her instructions, trying to stay calm, but the shock of what he had discovered was overwhelming. Within minutes, police officers from the Sumter County Sheriff's Office arrived at the U-Haul facility. By this time, a few early morning customers had arrived, some noticing the flashing lights of the patrol cars. The officers quickly cordoned off the area around the body with yellow crime scene tape, instructing curious onlookers to stay back. The victim was later identified as 22-year-old Emily Harrington, an elementary school teacher. Her body showed signs of blunt force trauma to the head, and there were dragged Devons on the ground, suggesting she had been moved to this location after her death. Emily was found wearing only her underwear, which raised immediate concerns about the circumstances leading to her death. Police noted the lack of blood at the scene, confirming the suspicion that Emily had been killed elsewhere. Jasper Rivera remained on the scene, visibly shaken but cooperative. He spoke to the officers about his discovery, still trying to process what he had found. The tragic scene marked the beginning of a complex and troubling investigation into Emily Harrington's untimely death. On March 12, 2022, shortly after the discovery of Emily Harrington's body at the U-Haul storage facility on County Road 466, the Sumter County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale investigation. Detective Ashley Collins, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving difficult cases, arrived on the scene with her partner, Officer Devin Stevens. The two were known for their efficient teamwork, often handling complex cases in the rapidly growing community of the Villages. The scene at the U-Haul facility was grim. Emily's body lay on the ground, partially clothed, with clear signs of blunt force trauma to her head. The area was eerily quiet, with only the hum of early morning traffic in the distance. The police quickly cordoned off the area with yellow crime scene tape, keeping curious onlookers and reporters at bay. Detective Collins carefully examined the body, noting that there was no blood on the ground, confirming that Emily had likely been killed elsewhere, and then moved. Nearby security cameras were the first items on the detective's checklist. They'd hoped to catch a glimpse of who had brought Emily to this isolated location. Detective Collins directed Officer Stevens to collect the footage from the facility's office, which was equipped with several cameras covering the entrance and the rows of storage units. They would later review the footage at the station, looking for any suspicious vehicles or people who had been near the scene around the time of the murder. As they continued their investigation, the detectives noticed dragged Evans on the gravel near Emily's body, indicating that she had been pulled from a vehicle and left at the site. This was a crucial piece of evidence that suggested a deliberate attempt to hide the body, possibly to delay its discovery. Detective Collins instructed the forensic team to take detailed photos of the Devons and collect any fibers or debris that might have come from the suspect's clothing or vehicle. The forensic team, led by Dr. Gray Squawk, arrived shortly after to process the scene. They used advanced tools such as Luno to search for any hidden blood traces, even though the scene appeared clean. The lack of visible blood confirmed the detectives' theory that Emily had been killed elsewhere, making it crucial to identify where the initial crime took place. As the team worked, Detective Collins interviewed Jasper Rivera, the maintenance worker who had found the body. Jasper was still visibly shaken, but provided a clear and detailed account of his discovery. He described how he initially thought the body was just a pile of clothes until he got closer. His account helped the detectives establish a timeline and narrowed down when the body had been left at the facility. The investigation at the crime scene was methodical and thorough, but it left the detectives with more questions than answers. They knew the key to solving Emily's murder lay in finding out where she had been killed and who had the motive to enter life so violently. The first person of interest in the investigation was Hal Davenport, a 68-year-old widower and retired businessman living in the Villages. Hal was well known in the community for his wealth and charm. Originally from Zanesville, Ohio, he had built a successful career in real estate and enjoyed a comfortable retirement in Florida's largest retirement community. Hal and Emily Harrington had met through an online arrangement, where Emily sought financial support from older, wealthy men. That relationship began with Hal providing Emily with money and gifts in exchange for sex and companionship. Over time, Hal became increasingly attached to Emily, viewing her as more than just a sugar daughter. His attachment soon turned into possessiveness, a trait that had caused problems in his past relationships. When police first interviewed Hal on March 13, 2022, a day after Emily's body was found, he appeared cooperative but nervous. Hal acknowledged his relationship with Emily, admitting he had last seen her 2 days before her death. He claimed they had spent the evening together at his home, where they watched old movies on Turner Classic Movies and had dinner from Outback Steakhouse, a favorite of Hal's. He insisted their relationship was strictly consensual and that he had no reason to harm her. Despite his initial calm demeanor, detectives noticed inconsistencies in Hal's story. When asked about his whereabouts on the night of Emily's death, Hal hesitated, stumbling over his words. He eventually provided an alibi stating he had been home alone, but the detectives found it suspicious that he couldn't provide any witnesses or details to back up his claim. His nervousness grew as the questioning continued, and he began to show signs of agitation, raising his voice when pressed about the nature of his relationship with Emily. The detectives also learned that Hal had a history of controlling behavior. His past relationships had ended badly, often due to his possessiveness. Police also discovered how his wife in Ohio supposedly committed suicide by driving her car into a lake just days after asking for a divorce. This information painted a picture of a man who could potentially act out of jealousy or fear of losing control. As the investigation progressed, Hal's name remained at the top of the suspect list. The police focused on gathering evidence that could either confirm or disprove his involvement in Emily's death. They obtained a warrant to search Hal's home, looking for any signs that he might have been involved in the crime. A search for traces of blood, any of Emily's belongings, or anything that might link Hal to the murder. Hal Davenport's initial calm demeanor began to crack under the pressure of the investigation, but the detectives knew they needed more than just suspicion to build a solid case against him. The second person of interest in the investigation was Mike Andrews, a 21-year-old part-time server at Applebee's and a community college student in nearby Leesburg. Mike had been dating Emily Harrington for about a year, and although their relationship had its ups and downs, they were generally seen as a happy couple. Mike was outgoing, ambitious, and well-liked by his peers, often dreaming of transferring to a 4-year university to study business. Despite his youthful energy, Mike was also deeply protective of Emily, though he had no idea about her involvement with Hal Davenport, her sugar daddy. On March 14, 2022, 2 days after Emily's body was discovered, the police brought Mike in for questioning. When the detectives asked him about his relationship with Emily, Mike described her as caring, smart, and always supportive of his goals. He said they had been planning a weekend getaway to Orlando, where they hoped to visit Universal Studios. He seemed genuinely shocked when he learned of Emily's death, his voice trembling as he asked the detectives how something so terrible could have happened. However, when detectives asked Mike about Emily's recent behavior, he mentioned something that raised their suspicions. A few weeks before her death, Mike had tested positive for an STD, which he believed he had contracted from Emily. This revelation had caused tension between them, and although they had talked about it, Mike admitted that he was hurt and confused.
He had confronted Emily, but she had reassured him that it was likely a misunderstanding, and they had tried to move past it. During the interrogation, Mike's emotions fluctuated between sadness and anger. He was clearly grieving the loss of Emily, but became defensive when the detectives asked if he had any idea about her financial struggles or other relationships. Mike insisted that he knew nothing about Emily's sugar daddy arrangement with Hal Davenport and stated that if he had known, he would have broken up with her. The detectives noted his frustration, but there was no clear evidence linking him to the murder. Mike also provided an alibi for the night of Emily's death, stating that he had been working a late shift at Applebee's, followed by a study session at home. The detectives verified his work schedule, confirming that he had indeed clocked out at 11 p.m. His alibi was further supported by a neighbor who saw him arrive home shortly after midnight. Although Mike had a possible motive due to the tension over the STD, his alibi and emotional response made it difficult for the detectives to pin him as the murderer. They kept him on their radar, but like with Hal Davenport, they knew they needed more concrete evidence before drawing any conclusions. The third person the police turned their attention to was Robert Harrington, Emily's 47-year-old father. Robert was a hard-working man who had raised Emily on his own after his wife passed away when Emily was just a teenager. He was known in the community as a devoted father who was proud of his daughter's accomplishments. However, the recent discovery of a positive pregnancy test in Emily's apartment, along with her sexual involvement with older men, had left him deeply worried and confused. On March 15, 2022, 3 days after Emily's body was found, Robert was brought in for questioning. The detectives knew he had been close to Emily and wanted to understand the nature of their relationship leading up to her death. Robert was visibly distraught during the interview, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He spoke lovingly about Emily, describing her as a bright, kind-hearted young woman who had always been dedicated to her students. He mentioned how she had dreamed of one day starting a family of her own, and how devastated he was that she would never have that chance. When the detectives asked Robert about the pregnancy test they found, he admitted that he had recently discovered it while visiting Emily's apartment. He had been shocked, unsure of how to approach the subject with his daughter. Robert explained that he had tried to reach out to her to discuss it, but Emily had seemed distant, brushing off his concerns. He had no idea who the father might be and was deeply troubled by the thought of Emily having sex with a much older man like Hal Davenport. Despite his clear distress, the detectives pressed Robert about his whereabouts on the night of Emily's death. Robert explained that he had been at home, watching TV and working on a project for his job as an electrician. He lived alone, and without anyone to corroborate his story, the detectives couldn't immediately verify his alibi. They noticed that Robert grew increasingly agitated during the questioning, his hands trembling as he tried to explain his concerns about Emily's recent behavior. Robert's love for his daughter was evident, but the detectives couldn't ignore the possibility that he might have acted out of anger or fear after discovering her secret life. They also considered the possibility that he had been upset about the pregnancy and the idea of Emily being sexually involved with multiple men. However, without concrete evidence, it was difficult to determine if Robert's emotional state had pushed him to commit a crime. The detectives remained cautious, recognizing that Robert's grief was genuine, but they kept him on their list of potential suspects. As with the other individuals they had interviewed, they needed more evidence to either rule him out or confirm their suspicions. On March 18, 2022, 5 days after Emily Harrington's body was found, a significant break in the case emerged. It was a warm afternoon in the Villages, with temperatures hovering around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, when Detective Ashley Collins received a call from the forensic lab. The team had finally analyzed the security footage from the U-Haul storage facility, along with additional evidence collected from the scene. The results revealed something the detectives hadn't anticipated: a partial license plate number from a vehicle that had entered the facility late on the night of March 11. The footage showed a dark-colored sedan pulling into the facility around 11:45 p.m., just hours before Emily's body was discovered. The car's movements were suspicious. It didn't park near any storage units and remained stationary for only a few minutes before quickly exiting the facility. The partial plate number, combined with the vehicle's make and model, a gray 2004 Honda Civic, gave the detectives a crucial lead. Detective Collins and Officer Devin Stevens immediately set to work cross-referencing the information with the Department of Motor Vehicles database. The search led them to an unexpected match: a car registered to Hal Davenport. This discovery added new weight to the growing suspicions around Hal, who had been cooperative yet evasive during his previous interviews. The detectives knew this evidence could be the key to linking Hal directly to the crime. With this new information, the detectives obtained a warrant to search Hal Davenport's home and car. On the morning of March 19, 2022, a team of officers arrived at Hal's residence in the Villages. The search was thorough, with detectives combing through Hal's personal belongings, electronic devices, and the dark-colored sedan parked in his driveway. Inside the car, they found fibers matching the fabric of the clothing Emily was last seen wearing, as well as traces of soil that matched the area near the U-Haul facility. The detectives realized they were closing in on the truth. The combination of the forensic evidence, the security footage, and Hal's erratic behavior pointed to him as the prime suspect. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, and the investigation was rapidly approaching its conclusion. On the morning of March 20, 2022, the Sumter County Sheriff's Office made a decisive move. Armed with the evidence they had gathered, Detectives Ashley Collins and Devin Stevens approached Hal Davenport's home in the Villages. It was a quiet Sunday, with many residents enjoying breakfast at local spots like Perkins and Culver's or taking morning strolls along the golf courses. But for Hal, this day would be anything but ordinary. The detectives knocked on Hal's door, their presence signaling the end of the investigation. When Hal opened the door, he looked surprised but not entirely shocked. Over the past few days, the pressure had been mounting, and it seemed he had sensed this moment was coming. Detective Collins informed Hal that they had enough evidence to place him under arrest for the murder of Emily Harrington. Hal's face paled and he slumped into a chair, muttering that it had all been a mistake. He confessed that on the night of March 11, he had gone to confront Emily after misinterpreting the document titled PDFILE Kids on her computer. His severe dyslexia had led him to believe it meant she was abusing children, and in a fit of rage and confusion, he had struck Emily with a heavy object. Hal explained that he had never meant to kill Emily, but when she fell to the floor unconscious, he panicked. In his frantic state, he decided to move her body, hoping to delay its discovery and buy himself some time to figure out what to do next. He had driven to the U-Haul storage facility in the middle of the night, hoping the isolated location would conceal her body long enough for him to come up with a plan. As the detectives placed Hal in handcuffs, his demeanor shifted from one of shock to resignation. He offered no resistance, quietly cooperating as they led him to the patrol car. The neighborhood, known for its laissez-faire sexual atmosphere and retirees, was now buzzing with the news of the arrest. Neighbors watched from their windows, some in disbelief that the kindly old man they knew could be capable of such a crime. Emily's family was notified of the arrest later that day. Her father, Robert Harrington, was devastated but relieved that the person responsible for his daughter's death had been caught. He struggled to comprehend how a man who had seemed so generous and caring could have done something so terrible. The arrest of Hal Davenport marked a critical turning point in the case, bringing a sense of closure to a community shaken by the tragedy. However, it also left lingering questions about the complexities of Hal's mind and the tragic misunderstanding that had led to Emily's death. The trial of Hal Davenport began on April 15, 2022. The Sumter County Courthouse, a modern building located in the heart of the Villages. The courtroom was filled with local residents, many of whom had followed the case closely through news reports on WFTV and other local stations. The atmosphere was tense, with a mix of curiosity and sorrow hanging in the air.
The prosecution, led by Assistant State Attorney Laura Reed, argued that Hal Davenport's actions were the result of a reckless and dangerous mindset. Reed, known for her firm but fair approach, laid out the case clearly. She presented evidence showing how Hal's dyslexia had led to a tragic misunderstanding, but emphasized that this did not excuse the violence. Reed described how Hal's confrontation with Emily had escalated into a deadly encounter, leading to her brutal death. She portrayed Emily as a dedicated teacher with a bright future ahead of her, contrasting this with the devastating end she met due to Hal's actions. In response, Hal's defense attorney, Morgan, took a different approach. Morgan, a well-respected defense lawyer known for his skillful arguments, argued that Hal's dyslexia had severely impaired his judgment. He presented evidence showing that Hal had genuinely misinterpreted the document on Emily's computer. According to Morgan, Hal's misreading had led him to believe Emily was involved in something sinister. The defense claimed that Hal's actions were not premeditated, but were instead the result of a momentary lapse in judgment driven by his frustration with his disability. Throughout the trial, Emily's family, including her father Robert Harrington, watched from the courtroom. They were visibly emotional, often seen holding hands or wiping away tears as the details of Emily's final moments were discussed. Their pain was palpable as they listened to the arguments being presented. After several days of testimony and closing arguments, the jury deliberated and reached a verdict on April 21, 2022. They found Hal Davenport guilty of manslaughter. The jury concluded that while Hal had not intended to kill Emily, his reckless actions had directly led to her death. This verdict was seen as a compromise between acknowledging Hal's severe misjudgment and recognizing the lack of premeditation. On April 28, 2022, Hal was sentenced to 36 months in prison. The sentencing drew mixed reactions. Some felt the sentence was too lenient given the grisly nature of the crime, while others believed it was appropriate given Hal's age and his severe dyslexia. Emily's family was disappointed with the outcome, but found some solace in the fact that justice had been served, even if it was not as harsh as they had hoped. The trial's conclusion marked the somber end to a tragic chapter for Emily's loved ones and the community of the Villages. After Hal Davenport was sentenced in April 2022, life slowly began to return to normal in the Villages, Florida. Emily's family faced a long and difficult road to healing. Her father, Robert Harrington, continued to live in the same home he had shared with Emily. The house was filled with memories of her, from photos on the walls to her belongings that still lingered. Robert, deeply affected by his daughter's death, sought counseling to help cope with his grief. He also became involved in local advocacy for victims' families, using his experience to support others going through similar tragedies. Hal Davenport, now serving his 36-month sentence, was housed in a state prison. At 68 years old, his life behind bars was challenging. The prison system, known for its strict security and routine, was a stark contrast to his previous comfortable life in the Villages. Hal's health deteriorated during his incarceration, and he struggled with the isolation and the harsh reality of prison life. His family, although supportive, found it difficult to reconcile the man they knew with the crime he had committed. As time went on, the Villages returned to its usual routines. However, the memory of Emily Harrington remained a poignant chapter in the community's history, reminding everyone of the fragile nature of life and the impact of one tragic event on many lives. Joel Donovan, 29, was a Boston native who worked as a successful software engineer at a small tech company in the city. He grew up in a lower middle-class family and had always been known for his intelligence and problem-solving skills. After attending Northeastern University, where he earned a degree in computer science and a reputation as a prodigy, Joel quickly found success in his career. His laid-back personality, dry sense of humor, and sharp mind made him well-liked by his friends and colleagues. In his personal life, Joel was deeply in love with his fiancée, Rebecca Abernathy, 27. The two had met through mutual friends in Boston, and their relationship had grown quickly. Friends described Joel as being smitten with Rebecca, who was outgoing and full of energy, a stark contrast to his more reserved nature. Despite their differences, they seemed to complement each other well. Rebecca had also developed a close friendship with Joel's mother, Patricia Donovan. The two went and bonded over their shared interests and spent a lot of time together. Joel's love for Rebecca was evident to everyone around him, and he believed they were a perfect match. They had planned a beautiful wedding to take place at a ranch near Marana, Arizona, in late February 2020, choosing the venue for its scenic views and rustic charm. However, in the weeks leading up to the wedding, Joel began to notice Rebecca's odd behavior. She seemed distant and distracted, often disappearing for hours at a time without explanation. This led to growing suspicion in Joel's mind. Still, he tried to push these thoughts aside, hoping that it was just pre-wedding stress. The day before the wedding, Joel spent time with his best man and close friend, Patrick Walsh, and they talked about their futures. Joel shared how excited he was to marry Rebecca and to start the next chapter of his life. He had plans to move to a bigger house and maybe even start a family soon. But those dreams were cut tragically short just one day later. On the afternoon of February 22, 2020, what was supposed to be a joyful wedding day took a horrific turn. It was around 4:30 p.m. when Joel Donovan's body was discovered at a picturesque ranch near Marana, Arizona. The ranch, a popular wedding venue known for its sprawling desert views and rustic barns, had been transformed for Joel and Rebecca's wedding. But instead of celebrating, guests were left shocked and horrified by what unfolded. Joel was found by his best man and close friend, Patrick Walsh. After hearing a commotion following Joel's shocking accusation that his new wife was a cheater during his wedding speech, Patrick rushed to check on his friend. He found Joel lying on the floor near the reception area, covered in blood. Joel had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. The knife, which had been used to cut the wedding cake earlier in the evening, lay nearby, stained with blood. Patrick was in disbelief. He had known Joel for most of his life and never imagined something like this could happen on what should have been one of the happiest days of his lives. His initial reaction was panic. Shaking, he called 911 and tried to explain what he had found. His voice was shaky as he told the dispatcher that Joel had been stabbed and was unresponsive. Several wedding guests had also seen the aftermath and were screaming in terror, adding to the chaos. Within minutes, the venue turned into a scene of confusion. Guests were ushered away from the crime scene, many of them still in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Some guests, who had been enjoying the open bar and taking pictures with their smartphones, found themselves documenting a murder scene instead. Photos and videos taken earlier in the day quickly spread on social media, with many people sharing their disbelief at how quickly the celebration turned into tragedy. Patrick tried to administer first aid, but quickly realized there was nothing more he could do. Joel was already gone by the time paramedics arrived. It was a gruesome sight. Blood pooled on the floor, Joel's tuxedo soaked red, and his eyes wide open in shock. The paramedics officially pronounced Joel dead on the scene, and the entire venue was put on lockdown while local authorities arrived to begin their investigation. Police arrived at the ranch near Marana, Arizona, at approximately 5:00 p.m. on February 22, 2020, just minutes after receiving Patrick Walsh's 911 call. Leading the investigation was Detective Martina Morales, a seasoned investigator with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Known for her calm demeanor and sharp instincts, Morales immediately took charge of the chaotic situation. As the sun began to set over the desert, the ranch's picturesque setting clashed with the grim scene inside the reception area. Blood was splattered across the wooden floor where Joel Donovan's body lay, his tuxedo soaked in red. The wedding cake, which had been beautifully decorated with desert flowers, stood nearby, its knife now a murder weapon. Guests had been ushered outside by staff, some still wearing their formal attire, visibly shaken by the horrific events. Detective Morales and her team immediately began surveying the area, carefully marking off sections of the reception hall with yellow crime scene tape. They started by photographing the scene and collecting potential evidence. The murder weapon, the cake knife, was the first piece of evidence collected. Morales noted that it appeared to have been wiped hastily, likely in a panic by the attacker, but blood traces were still clearly visible on the blade. Joel had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, each wound deep and precise. Based on the angle of the stab wounds, the detectives believed the attacker had been standing close to him, possibly face to face. Blood spatter analysis was done to determine the sequence of events, with experts using luminal spray to check for any hidden bloodstains that might have been missed by the naked eye. Morales quickly interviewed the guests, many of whom were still in shock, their wedding clothes rumpled and their faces pale. Everyone described hearing Joel's shocking accusation during his wedding speech. "My wife is a cheater," followed by a loud commotion. Some guests reported seeing a masked intruder rushing through the crowd moments after Joel collapsed. However, no one could give a clear description of the attacker. Security footage from the venue was immediately retrieved, and officers began reviewing it on site.
Morales hoped that it would reveal more about the mysterious masked intruder, but the video quality was poor, making it difficult to identify anyone clearly. With the scene secured and evidence collected, Morales knew this would be a long and complex case. The investigation was just beginning. The first suspect the police turned their attention to was Rebecca Abernethy Donovan, the 27-year-old bride and Joel Donovan's new wife. In the hours following the murder, Rebecca was taken to the Pima County Sheriff's Office for questioning. Still wearing her white wedding dress, now stained with blood, Rebecca appeared dazed and in shock. She was a marketing executive from Boston, known for her outgoing personality and her tendency to enjoy the spotlight, a sharp contrast to her husband's more reserved nature. Detective Morales led the interrogation. Her goal was to determine whether Rebecca had any involvement in Joel's murder. From the start, Rebecca was emotional, her voice trembling as she recounted the events of the day. She described her marriage to Joel as mostly happy, though she admitted they had experienced difficulties leading up to the wedding, she said tearfully. Rebecca's emotions fluctuated wildly during the interview, swinging between sobbing and stunned silence. When Morales brought up Joel's shocking accusation, his claim that Rebecca had been unfaithful, Rebecca's face went pale. She initially denied everything, claiming she had no idea what Joel was talking about. However, the police were already aware of Joel's suspicions about Rebecca's affair. They had learned from friends and family that Joel had grown distant and paranoid in the weeks before the wedding, convinced that Rebecca was hiding something. Under further questioning, Rebecca's calm began to crack. Her responses became evasive, and she grew defensive when pressed about the affair. Morales noted that Rebecca's emotions seemed exaggerated at times, raising suspicions about whether she was hiding something. However, despite her suspicious behavior, Rebecca denied any involvement in Joel's murder. She insisted that she had been frozen in shock when Joel was attacked, and had no idea who the masked intruder was. Rebecca's secret affair, it turned out, wasn't just with anyone. It was with another woman. The revelation of this affair added a complicated twist to the case. Joel had apparently caught Rebecca sending sexually explicit texts just hours before the ceremony, and his accusation during the wedding speech had been his way of exposing her. Although Rebecca's affair was a clear motive for tension between her and Joel, there was no direct evidence linking her to the murder. She was released after several hours of questioning, but remained under close surveillance as the investigation continued. The investigation took a dramatic turn on the morning of February 23, 2020, the day after Joel Donovan's murder. The weather was clear and crisp, with temperatures hovering in the mid-60s, typical for the Arizona desert in late winter. While the police had been initially stumped by the masked intruder's identity, new evidence emerged that added a shocking layer to the case. Around 10:00 a.m., Detective Morales received a call from one of the wedding venue's cleaning staff. The worker had been tidying up the honeymoon suite when she discovered something unusual, a pair of torn women's undergarments beneath the bed, along with a half-empty bottle of champagne. The discovery prompted Morales to order a full sweep of the suite. What they found next would change the course of the investigation. In the bed, they found traces of bodily fluids, confirming that a sexual act had taken place just hours before the wedding. DNA testing later revealed that both Rebecca Abernethy Donovan and Joel's own mother, Patricia Donovan, had been having sex in the bed together. This was the breakthrough the police needed. It turned out that moments before the wedding ceremony, Joel had walked in on Rebecca and Patricia having sex in the honeymoon suite. Overcome with shock and rage, Joel left the suite without confronting them, deciding instead to make a public spectacle at the wedding. It was this moment of heartbreak and fury that led to Joel's explosive declaration during his wedding speech. "My wife is a cheater." He had been planning to expose both his mother and his bride in front of all the guests. According to interviews with friends and family, Joel had been suspicious of Rebecca's behavior for weeks, but had never expected to catch her in such a betrayal with his own mother. Detective Morales now had a clearer understanding of the motive behind Joel's outburst, as well as a better picture of the emotional state of both Rebecca and Patricia at the time of the murder. The affair was a secret that neither woman wanted to come to light, and Joel's exposure of their relationship had shattered the facade they built. With this new evidence, Morales shifted her focus back to Rebecca and Patricia. The wedding day betrayal had set the stage for the murder, and it was becoming clear that the motive was deeply personal.
Now, Morales needed to determine whether it was Rebecca, Patricia, or someone else who had taken the ultimate step to silence Joel forever. After uncovering the shocking affair between Rebecca Abernethy Donovan and Patricia Donovan, the police turned their attention to Joel's mother, Patricia, as the second key suspect. At 61 years old, Patricia was a well-known figure in her small town outside Boston, where she owned a popular diner, Donovan's Diner, which had been featured in a 2018 Boston Globe article for its classic comfort food. Despite her public reputation as a hardworking businesswoman and a devoted single mother, Patricia had a secret life that few knew about. For nearly 4 months, Patricia had been involved in a sexual affair with Rebecca, her son's fiancée. The affair had started innocently enough, with Rebecca confiding in Patricia about her cold feet as the wedding approached. But what began as emotional support quickly turned into something more. Patricia had developed intense sexual feelings for Rebecca and had grown possessive of her, desperate to keep their relationship hidden from Joel and the rest of their family. When Joel discovered them having sex in the honeymoon suite hours before the ceremony, Patricia knew everything was about to unravel. After Joel's public accusation at the wedding, Patricia had remained silent, trying to keep her composure as her son exposed her darkest secret. Her facade cracked when Joel was murdered in front of all the guests, stabbed by a masked intruder. Patricia became a prime suspect, as her emotional connection to Rebecca and the humiliation she faced gave her a strong motive to silence Joel. Detective Morales interrogated Patricia for several hours at the Pima County Sheriff's Office. During the questioning, Patricia appeared calm but deeply emotional, often pausing to wipe away tears. She admitted to the affair with Rebecca, but vehemently denied any involvement in her son's murder. However, the detectives noted inconsistencies in her story. Patricia claimed to have been in shock during the attack, yet several wedding guests reported seeing her leaving the area before Joel was stabbed. Despite her denials, Patricia's behavior during the interrogation raised red flags. Her emotional state shifted rapidly from sorrow to anger as Morales pressed her on the details of the affair and its aftermath. Although Patricia continued to deny any involvement in the murder, her possessiveness over Rebecca and the shame of being publicly exposed made her a compelling suspect. However, without direct evidence linking her to the attack, the police couldn't yet make an arrest. For now, Patricia remained the suspect, her secrets threatening to destroy everything she had worked so hard to protect. The third suspect the police focused on was Patrick Daniel Walsh, Joel Donovan's best man and lifelong friend. Patrick, 29, was a middle school teacher back in Boston. Known for his outgoing personality and laid-back attitude, he was a fixture in Joel's life since they were kids. They'd grown up together, attended college at the same time, and shared a close bond. Patrick had always been seen as a bit of a womanizer, often dating multiple women at once, but no one ever expected him to be tied to such a brutal crime. At the wedding, Patrick had stood just a few feet away from Joel during the shocking outburst where Joel accused Rebecca of cheating. Patrick had been one of the first people to rush to Joel's side after the stabbing, shouting for someone to call 911. Despite his apparent distress, the police couldn't overlook the fact that Patrick had been very close to both Joel and Rebecca in the months leading up to the wedding, and there were rumors he knew about an affair long before the ceremony. It was later revealed that Patrick had actually discovered Rebecca's affair with Patricia Donovan weeks before the wedding, but had kept it quiet. According to testimony from other family friends, Patrick had seen Rebecca sneaking around with Patricia during wedding planning trips but chose not to tell Joel. The reason? Patrick had been secretly sexually involved with Rebecca too. Their brief fling had started after a late-night conversation over drinks during one of those wedding planning weekends. Patrick had hoped it would continue, but Rebecca had ended it quickly, telling him she was committed to marrying Joel. Detectives questioned Patrick in the days following the murder. He appeared visibly shaken but cooperative. When asked why he hadn't come forward with the affair sooner, Patrick admitted he didn't want to hurt his friend. But the police couldn't ignore the possibility that Patrick's silence and close relationship with both Joel and Rebecca might have given him a motive. While Patrick's involvement in the affair added another layer of complexity to the case, there was no physical evidence linking him to the murder scene. Still, his proximity to the crime and his relationship with both the bride and the victim kept him firmly on the list of suspects. It wasn't until the police took a closer look at the chaos unfolding at the Donovan wedding that they began to piece together the truth. The murder investigation had already examined Rebecca, Joel's bride, and Patrick, the best man, as suspects. But as more guests were interviewed, Attention shifted to someone who, at first, seemed like an unlikely culprit, Joel's own mother, Patricia Donovan. Patricia Donovan, 61, had built a reputation in Boston as a successful diner owner. She was well known for her strong work ethic and no-nonsense attitude, but underneath that polished exterior, Patricia had been hiding a secret affair with her son's fiancée, Rebecca. The affair had been going on for months, and Joel discovered the shocking truth just hours before the wedding. According to a close friend of the couple, Joel had walked in on Rebecca and Patricia having sex in the bed of their honeymoon suite moments before the ceremony. Overwhelmed with heartbreak and anger, Joel decided to expose their affair during his wedding speech. In front of the entire crowd, he screamed, "My wife's a cheater," bringing their secret out into the open. This public humiliation was too much for Patricia. As she stood there, reeling from the shock of being exposed by her own son, Patricia snapped. Overcome with a mixture of rage and desperation, she changed into a hoodie and jeans before grabbing a knife from the nearby wedding cake table. In a blind fury, she stabbed Joel multiple times in the chest. Guests watched in horror, unable to comprehend how the joyous occasion had turned so violently tragic. Investigators had initially suspected Rebecca, but as they combed through witness statements and pieced together the timeline of events, they realized Patricia's behavior was more suspicious. Surveillance footage from the venue showed Patricia acting nervously in the moments leading up to the stabbing, and multiple guests reported seeing her approach Joel just before the attack. On March 2, 2020, police arrested Patricia Donovan at her home in Boston. She didn't seem surprised. In fact, she showed little emotion as officers led her away in handcuffs. The news of Patricia's arrest devastated Joel's family and friends. The thought of a mother killing her own son over an affair left them heartbroken and searching for answers. Many struggled to understand how Patricia's secret obsession had turned so deadly. The trial of Patricia Donovan began in late November 2021 back at the Pima County Superior Court in Arizona. The prosecution, led by 45-year-old Assistant District Attorney Maria Foxcomb, laid out a clear and shocking case. Foxcomb, known for her methodical and passionate approach, argued that Patricia had been driven by a toxic combination of shame, obsession, and jealousy. She painted a picture of a woman so desperate to protect her affair with her son's fiancée that she resorted to murder when it was exposed in front of all their wedding guests. Foxcomb played surveillance footage from the wedding venue showing Patricia's erratic behavior leading up to the stabbing. She called multiple witnesses who had seen Patricia grabbing the knife intended for the wedding cake and using it to fatally stab her son, Joel Donovan. On the defense side was 54-year-old Mark Dempsey, a seasoned attorney known for his skill in high-profile cases. Dempsey argued that Patricia acted out of a moment of intense emotional distress and shouldn't be held fully responsible for her actions. He claimed the public humiliation caused by Joel's outburst had pushed her into a temporary psychotic break. Dempsey tried to convince the jury that Patricia's mental state should lead to a reduced charge of manslaughter instead of murder. The jury deliberated for just under 2 days. On December 15, 2021, Patricia Donovan was found guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing was swift, minus 20 years to life in an Arizona state prison. Many of Joel's family members felt that justice had been served, but the pain of losing him in such a horrific way would never fade. Patricia, on the other hand, showed little reaction to the verdict, staring blankly as the sentence was read. The verdict left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Joel's friends and family were left to pick up the pieces, grappling with the complicated emotions of love, betrayal, and loss. After Patricia Donovan's trial and sentencing, life for everyone involved took a dramatic turn. The Donovan family, once well respected in their Boston community, was now overshadowed by the tragic events that unfolded in Marana, Arizona. Rebecca Abernethy Donovan, Patricia's lover, and Joel's widow, faced intense public scrutiny. Shunned by many in Boston, Rebecca struggled to find stability. She left her marketing job, unable to cope with the backlash from both her professional and personal circles. She also moved to a different city to escape the constant media attention. Rebecca's former colleagues at her old job, a marketing firm known for its innovative campaigns, expressed shock and disappointment over the scandal. In contrast, Patrick Daniel Walsh, Joel's best man, tried to rebuild his life. Though he was never charged with any crime, Patrick faced significant fallout due to his affair with Rebecca. His reputation as a school teacher suffered, and he found it hard to maintain his friendships and professional relationships.
Patrick took a leave of absence from his teaching position at Boston's East End Middle School and started a new job in a different state, away from the intense scrutiny of his past. Patricia Donovan began serving her 20-to-life sentence in a state prison in Arizona. Her once orderly life had unraveled completely. Patricia's incarceration was marked by a series of struggles as she adjusted to prison life. The emotional toll of her actions, coupled with the isolation from her family, made her remaining years behind bars particularly challenging. The impact of the case extended beyond the immediate families involved. The Marana wedding venue, once a symbol of celebration, became a somber reminder of the tragedy. Local media continued to cover the story, keeping the community's attention on the shocking events of that February day. Life for everyone connected to the case had been forever changed. The search for normalcy amid the aftermath of such a tragic and public event was an ongoing struggle for all involved. Jenny Braze was a 34-year-old woman who lived in Palm Bay, Florida, with her husband, Arthur. She was a teacher of the local high school, where she was loved by her students and fellow teachers. Jenny had a bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Florida. She was passionate about reading and always found time to help others improve their reading skills. Jenny was especially known for organizing book clubs and poetry readings in the community. She loved books like To Kill a Mockingbird and Pride and Prejudice, and often recommended them to her friends and students. Jenny was also very athletic. She loved running and participated in local marathons. She was often seen jogging in the mornings around Palm Bay's Turkey Creek Sanctuary. She had even completed the Disney World Marathon twice and was training for another marathon when she died. Her love for running kept her fit and healthy, and she encouraged others to join her in her fitness journey. Jenny's family included her husband, Arthur Braze, her parents, Thomas and Karen Mason, from Iowa, and her younger sister, Emily. She was close to her family and often spent weekends with them, having picnics at the local parks or attending church services. Her friends described her as kind-hearted and always willing to lend a helping hand. Jenny was known for her warm smile and friendly nature. She had a way of making everyone feel special and important. In the days before her death, Jenny was busy with her usual activities. She was planning the next book club meeting and was excited about discussing the latest book they had chosen. Her Nights Under the Maid's Moon by the late Joyce Lehman, which was a popular read in 2004. She was also looking forward to participating in the upcoming Palm Bay Fun Run, a local charity event. Jenny had just bought new running shoes from the nearby Sports Authority and was eager to try them out. Jenny's life seemed perfect on the outside, but she had secrets that not many knew about. Jenny dreamed of writing her own book one day and often talked about it with her friends. She wanted to share her love for literature and hoped her book would inspire others. Unfortunately, Jenny's life was cut short before she could fulfill her dreams. On February 18, 2004, Palm Bay, Florida, was covered in a light fog, and the temperature was cool and comfortable. At around 7:30 a.m., Carol Stevens, a 92-year-old retiree and neighbor of Jenny Braze, was walking her dog, Melania Stratanowicz, in Turkey Creek Sanctuary, a popular local park. Carol enjoyed her morning walks and always listened to her favorite radio station, 104.1 FM, which was playing some Backstreet Boys that morning. As Carol walked along the path, she noticed something unusual near a cluster of trees. Melania began to bark and pull on his leash, leading Carol closer to the area. As she got closer, she saw what looked like a person lying on the ground. Her heart raced as she approached the figure and realized it was Jenny Braze. Jenny was lying on her back, her eyes blown out by gunshots, blood surrounding her head. Carol was in shock. She quickly took out her cell phone, a Nokia 3310, and dialed 911, her hands trembling. The operator instructed her to stay on the line and wait for the police and paramedics to arrive. Carol kept glancing at Jenny, unable to believe what she was seeing. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air as the police and paramedics arrived. Officers quickly secured the area, and paramedics confirmed that Jenny was dead. They noticed 2 gunshot wounds, one in each eye, and a message written in blood beside her, "I am a cheater." The scene was both shocking and heartbreaking. As the police worked, news of the murder quickly spread through the neighborhood. Local TV stations like WES2 News and WKNG News 6 began covering the story, and reporters gathered near the park, eager for any information they could get. The discovery of Jenny Braze's body shocked the quiet community of Palm Bay.
People who knew Jenny were devastated, unable to comprehend how such a kind and beloved person could meet such a violent end. The police vowed to bring her killer to justice, but the journey to uncover the truth was just beginning. The Palm Bay police arrived swiftly at the scene where Jenny Braze's body was found. It was a foggy morning on February 18, 2004, and the atmosphere was tense. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley led the investigation. Detective Harrison, a tall man with graying hair, was known for his sharp attention to detail and calm demeanor. Detective Honley, a younger officer with a knack for empathy, was determined and methodical. The crime scene was disturbing. Jenny's body lay on the damp ground of Turkey Creek Sanctuary, a local park. Blood surrounded her head, and the chilling message, "I am a cheater," was written in her blood next to her. She had been shot twice, once in each eye. At such a close range, her eye sockets were blown out, making the scene even more horrifying. As the detectives began their work, the park was quickly cordoned off with yellow police tape. Forensic experts arrived with their equipment, setting up tents and floodlights to illuminate the area. They carefully photographed the scene, ensuring they captured every detail. They collected bullet casings and took samples of the blood message for analysis. The detectives looked for any other clues around the body. They noticed the ground was slightly disturbed, suggesting a struggle. Detective Harrison pointed out a broken branch nearby, which could have been used in the fight. The early morning light added a sense of urgency to their work. They knew time was critical in the early stages of an investigation. The detectives used luminol to check for any blood that might have been cleaned up. They also used metal detectors to search for any hidden evidence. As they worked, they interviewed nearby residents and park visitors who might have seen or heard anything unusual. The autopsy later confirmed that Jenny was shot with a 9mm handgun. The police knew they had to find this weapon to make their case stronger. They also checked security cameras in the area, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. Carol, still shaken, gave a brief statement to the police about how she found Jenny's body. She was visibly upset, her voice quivering as she recounted the morning's events. After her statement, Carol went home, hugging Melania tightly, grateful for his presence but deeply disturbed by what she had witnessed. Detectives Harrison and Homley worked long hours, piecing together the evidence. They were determined to find out who could commit such a brutal crime against someone so beloved in their community. Every detail mattered, and they couldn't afford to miss anything. The investigation was just beginning, and the detectives knew they had a long road ahead. The community of Palm Bay held its breath, waiting for answers and hoping for justice for Jenny Braze. Arthur Braze, Jenny's husband, was the first suspect the police investigated. Arthur was 36 years old and worked at a local pet supply store. He was known to be methodical and logical, with a passion for solving complex problems. His interest in amateur pharmacology, a hobby where he experimented with different chemicals, made the police suspicious. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Homley brought Arthur in for questioning on the evening of February 19, 2004. The interrogation room was quiet and dimly lit, adding to the tension. Arthur appeared calm, but was visibly tired and stressed. He claimed he had been working late on the night of the murder, trying to complete an inventory at the store. Arthur described his marriage to Jenny as generally happy, but admitted they had their struggles. He said he had no idea who could have wanted to harm her. When the detectives asked about Jenny's affairs, Arthur's calm demeanor shifted. He seemed shocked and hurt, insisting he did not know anything about her extramarital relationships. Detectives pressed Arthur on his whereabouts during the critical hours of the murder. Arthur provided an alibi, stating he was at work until 10 p.m. and then went straight home. However, there were no witnesses to confirm his story. His colleagues had left earlier, and there were no security cameras at the store to verify his claims. Arthur's methodical nature came into question. The detectives knew he had a deep understanding of chemistry from his hobby. They wondered if he could have used this knowledge in the murder. However, Arthur maintained his innocence, growing more frustrated with each question. Forensic evidence began to mount against him. The bullets used in the murder were traced back to a 9mm handgun registered in Arthur's name. When asked about the gun, Arthur said it had been stolen from his home months before, but he had not reported it missing. This admission only increased the detectives' suspicions. Throughout the interrogation, Arthur's responses were a mix of calm explanations and visible frustration. He repeatedly denied any involvement in Jenny's murder, but the detectives felt there was more to the story. They knew they needed more evidence to either confirm his guilt or clear his name. As the investigation continued, Arthur remained a prime suspect. The community of Palm Bay watched closely, waiting to see if the quiet, logical husband could really be behind such a brutal crime. The detectives were determined to uncover the truth, knowing that every detail could bring them closer to solving the case. Judy Ann Wharton, Jenny Braze's close friend, was the second suspect the police investigated. Judy Ann, 32, was a metaphysical surgeon and spiritual healer from Los Angeles, something her deeply conservative community found deeply suspicious. She was known for her vibrant and outgoing personality. Always the life of the party, Judy Ann often brought homemade health drinks and snacks to Jenny's home. She believed in holistic living and frequently talked about the benefits of natural remedies.
On February 20, 2004, detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley called Judy Ann in for questioning. She arrived dressed in bright, flowing clothes, with a calm and serene demeanor. The detectives asked her about her relationship with Jenny, and Judy Ann admitted they were very close friends. She also confessed that they had a sexual relationship,
but insisted it was consensual and loving. Judy Ann's alibi for the night of the murder was that she was hosting a spiritual healing session at her home, attended by several people. She provided the names of the attendees, who later confirmed her story. However, the detectives were still suspicious due to her close relationship with Jenny and access to her home. When questioned about the murder, Judy Ann seemed genuinely shocked and saddened. She described Jenny as a kind and loving person who would never hurt anyone. The detectives asked if she knew about Jenny's other relationships, including the one with David Clark. Judy Ann said she was aware of them and did not feel threatened by them, as her beliefs embraced love in many forms. Despite her calm exterior, Judy Ann's responses raised some eyebrows. She claimed to have spiritual sexual relationships with various celebrities such as Tom Cruise and Oprah, along with historical figures like Jane Austen and Jane Eyre. In fact, she claimed to have had sex with every Jane who had ever lived, which made her seem less credible. The detectives found it hard to take her completely seriously, but continued to probe for any possible motive. The detectives also considered Judy Ann's knowledge of natural substances. They wondered if she could have used her expertise to commit the crime in a unique way. However, the method of murder, a 9mm handgun, did not fit her usual practices. There were no signs of her involvement in acquiring or using a firearm. Judy Ann's calm and cooperative demeanor during the interrogation contrasted with the brutal nature of the crime. She maintained her innocence throughout, expressing deep sorrow for the loss of her friend. The detectives noted her emotional responses but knew they needed more concrete evidence to rule her out as a suspect. On February 22, 2004, Palm Bay police received a significant breakthrough in the case. It was a sunny, warm afternoon when a local retiree, 98-year-old Maria May Clayton, was cleaning out her garage. While sorting through some old boxes, she stumbled upon a VHS tape without a label. Curious, she decided to play it in her VCR, a Panasonic model she had owned for years. To her shock, the tape contained a homemade adult movie featuring Jenny Braze and David Clark, the local high school principal. Horrified by what she saw and on the verge of having a heart attack, Maria May immediately called the police and handed over the tape. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley viewed the tape and were stunned by its contents. The video not only confirmed an affair between Jenny and David Clark, but also suggested a potential motive. The detectives noted the sexually explicit nature of the footage and the fact that it might have been filmed secretly. The discovery of the VHS tape added a new layer to the investigation. The police speculated that the tape could be a motive for murder, either to silence Jenny or to prevent the tape from being exposed. Detective Harrison believed the tape might be the key to solving the case. The police continued to investigate the origin of the VHS tape. They discovered that the tape had been recorded on an old camcorder, a Sony Handycam model. They traced the serial number to a store in Palm Bay, where it was purchased 2 years earlier. The store's records showed it was bought with a credit card belonging to Judy Ann Wharton. This new evidence shifted the focus back to Judy Ann. The detectives brought her in for further questioning. Judy Ann maintained her innocence and denied any knowledge of the tape. She suggested that someone might be trying to frame her. The discovery of the VHS tape raised more questions than answers, but it was a crucial piece of evidence. The police knew they had to dig deeper to uncover the truth and bring justice for Jenny Braze. David Clark, the local high school principal, became a key suspect after the discovery of the VHS tape. David, 65 years old, was known for his strict, no-nonsense approach to administration.
He had a reputation for being authoritative, often making controversial decisions, like banning books such as Anne of Green Gables and Little House on the Prairie for their perceived erotic content. On February 23, 2004, detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle humbly brought David in for further questioning. The police station was buzzing with activity, and David seemed visibly nervous as he sat in the interrogation room. The detectives presented the sexually explicit VHS tape as evidence, and David's reaction was one of extreme shock and shame. David admitted to the affair with Jenny, but insisted that it was consensual and that he had no part in her murder. He confessed that their relationship had been ongoing for about a year and that they had met in secret to avoid scandal. He explained that the tape was part of a collection of homemade adult movie they had filmed with Judy Ann, acting as director and camera woman, a situation not uncommon in a state where 1 out of every 8 adults have performed in an adult movie. The detectives dug deeper, questioning David about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. David claimed he was at home, grading papers and watching the evening news on WKMG News 6. His wife Lilus confirmed his alibi, stating they spent the evening together. Despite his strong alibi, the detectives remained suspicious. David's demeanor during the interrogation was a mix of fear and defensiveness. He denied any involvement in Jenny's death and seemed genuinely distressed about the accusations. The detectives noted his nervousness and asked if he had any enemies who might want to frame him. David mentioned several parents and staff members who were unhappy with his strict policies, but none seemed likely suspects. The police also investigated David's financial records and phone logs. They found no evidence of financial trouble or suspicious activity. His phone records showed no contact with Jenny on the day of the murder, supporting his claim that they hadn't planned to meet. However, the detectives were not entirely convinced of David's innocence. A sexually explicit tape, his secret relationship with Jenny, and his authoritative nature all pointed to possible motives. They knew they needed more evidence to either clear his name or prove his guilt. As the investigation continued, the community of Palm Bay was left reeling from the revelations. Parents and students at the high school were shocked to learn about David's secret hobby and his affair with Jenny. The detectives were determined to get to the bottom of the case, knowing that every piece of evidence brought them closer to finding Jenny's killer. On February 24, 2004, after days of intense investigation, the police finally identified the murderer, Arthur Braze, Jenny's husband. Arthur, 36, worked at a local pet supply store and was known for his logical and methodical nature. The police pieced together a timeline of events and evidence that pointed directly to him. Arthur discovered Jenny's affairs with David Clark and Judy Ann Wharton, which left him feeling utterly betrayed. The emotional turmoil and anger drove him to meticulously plan her murder. His motive was clear: revenge and a desire to expose Jenny's infidelity. On the night of the murder, Arthur left work earlier than he claimed. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed him purchasing a pair of gloves and a bottle of water around 8 p.m. This contradicted his alibi of working late. Additionally, ballistics tests confirmed that the bullets used in Jenny's murder came from the 9mm handgun registered to Arthur, which he claimed had been stolen. The detectives also found traces of gunpowder residue on a jacket in Arthur's closet, further incriminating him. On the sunny morning of February 24, the detectives, armed with an arrest warrant, arrived at Arthur's house. It was a tense moment as they knocked on the door, knowing they were about to confront the prime suspect. Arthur opened the door, looking tired and stressed. When the detectives informed him that he was under arrest for the murder of his wife, he appeared shocked but did not resist. His demeanor was one of resignation, as if he knew this moment was inevitable. The police handcuffed him and led him to the squad car while the neighbors watched in disbelief. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community of Palm Bay. Jenny's family, still grieving her loss, were devastated to learn that Arthur was the murderer. They had trusted him and never suspected he could commit such a heinous act. Their reactions were a mix of sorrow and anger, struggling to understand how someone so close could betray them. As Arthur was taken into custody, the detectives reflected on the complexity of the case. They had uncovered layers of secrets and lies, ultimately leading them to the truth. The evidence was overwhelming, and they were confident they had the right person. The arrest of Arthur Braze brought a sense of closure to the community, but also left many questions about how such a tragedy could occur. The detectives knew that while the arrest was a significant step, the journey to justice for Jenny Braze was far from over. Arthur Braze's trial began on May 15, 2005, at the Brevard County Courthouse. The community of Palm Bay was captivated by the case, which had dominated local news for months. The courtroom was filled with reporters, family members, and curious residents eager to see justice served. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Sarah Goober, a 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough and thorough. Goobert argued that
Arthur had meticulously planned Jenny's murder out of jealousy and anger over her affairs. She presented the gunpowder residue, the incriminating surveillance footage, and the ballistics evidence as proof. Goobert also highlighted the note written in Jenny's blood, "I am a cheater," as a clear sign of Arthur's motive. The defense attorney, Robert Lackley, was a seasoned lawyer known for his calm demeanor and sharp intellect. Lackley, 50, argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was no direct proof linking Arthur to the crime scene at the exact time of the murder. He suggested that someone else could have framed Arthur, pointing out the other suspects, David Clark and Judy M. Wharton, who also had motives. Throughout the trial, Jenny's family sat in the front row, their faces a mix of sorrow and determination. They listened intently as witnesses testified and evidence was presented. The emotional toll was visible, especially when the sexually explicit VHS tape was shown in court, graphically revealing Jenny's affair with David Clark. After 2 weeks of intense testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days. On June 3, 2005, they reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreman stood to deliver the decision, guilty of first-degree murder. Arthur Braze showed little emotion as the verdict was read, his face pale and expressionless. Arthur was sentenced to 500 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence brought a sense of relief to Jenny's family, but also a deep sadness that such a tragedy had occurred. The community of Palm Bay reacted with mixed emotions. Some felt justice had been served, while others were still shocked that Arthur, a man they had trusted, could commit such a brutal crime. The case sparked conversations about domestic violence and the hidden lives people leave behind closed doors. After the trial of Arthur Braze concluded in June 2004, the residents of Palm Bay, Florida, began the long process of moving forward. David Clark, the high school principal, faced severe backlash after the trial. His affair with Jenny and the explicit VHS tape had tarnished his reputation. He resigned from his position and moved away from Palm Bay, seeking anonymity in a small town in Georgia. Despite his involvement in the scandal, he was never charged with any crime related to Jenny's death. Judy Ann Wharton, Jenny's friend and another suspect, continued her work as a metaphysical surgeon and spiritual healer. Although she was cleared of any wrongdoing, the scandal affected her business. She held a public healing ceremony for Jenny, inviting those who knew and loved her to join in a collective remembrance. This event helped Judy Ann regain some trust and respect in the community. Arthur Braze, now serving a life sentence without parole, adjusted to life in prison. He participated in counseling and anger management programs, but the weight of his actions haunted him. Occasionally, he wrote letters to his children, hoping one day they might understand his actions, though it seemed unlikely. The trial and its aftermath left a lasting impact on Palm Bay. The community became more vigilant about domestic issues, with local organizations hosting workshops on recognizing and preventing domestic violence. Jenny's story served as a sobering reminder of the importance of open communication and support in relationships. As time passed, the memory of Jenny Braze remained a poignant chapter in Palm Bay's history. The community's resilience and commitment to honoring her legacy ensured that her spirit lived on through the activities and causes she loved.